Edinburgh, right?
We are humans.
In this VUCA Bani world, what does it mean to be human? How can we human well?
How can each human feel truly alive?
How can each community and city thrive and evolve?
How can 10,000 cities on our planet interconnect for our collective benefit?
How can we live in harmony with all life on Earth?
These are the questions that brought us together at Living Cities Earth, a very young and fast-growing global collective that started 3 months ago. We are a horizontally organized action community of 25 of the world's leading integral researchers and practitioners, with a total of 300 years of research and leadership that has benefited millions of people in over 1,000 cities. Living Cities Earth interconnects both people and institutions that together reach over 100 countries on all continents. Our aim is to integrate our capacities to human well with 10,000 cities serving Gaia's well-being, and to discover how can we nurture cities as complex, adaptive, living, spiritual human habitats in the right relationship to humans, bioregions, all other cities, and the planet. To do that, we must not only learn but also unlearn, to create space for new ways of knowing, doing, and interbeing in the 5 dimensions of person, people, place, places, and planet. What exactly are these 5 areas that form our testing grounds? First, it is Earth with all forms of life. Second, a naturally emerging network of 10,000 cities. Third, each individual city as a living ecosystem. Fourth, our communities. And fifth, each individual person. On each level, we will explore what we have to learn and unlearn in order to human well. These 2 streams of research as yin and yang represent a full circle of life. As critical and complex this inquiry is, it calls for a radical and diverse set of research methods, from action research to mapping, from ULab to artistic inquiry, and well beyond. We are both dreamers and doers, and plan to present our findings in many ways. From a series of maps and LCE Global Journal to cartoons and living project templates, from a global forum for 1,000 cities to an academy for mayors and young leaders, art exhibitions, and a living journal of unlearning. And we realize that the very idea of a traditional journal may well be something we'll need to unlearn. We bring all of our inspiration, competencies, and resources to this project.
We trust that by acting together, now and in the future,
we can learn to human well and help millions of people live happier lives.
In harmony with each other.
And all life on Earth.
Wow, how beautiful. I love the, the ending with the child. It's daughter of Peter Wackers, speaking, and all life on Earth with this soft voice, Alexander, right?
Indeed. And this is, as Shweta was also saying, with the 5 Ps, the people, the person, people, place, places, and planet. And of course, with all life. This is, I think, what you're calling forth here. And this is the idea that the Living Cities is, it's part of this quest to live into, thrive into our home together, to human well together.
Wow. Well, welcome everyone who is joining us today in person through social networks and who will be watching later the recording of our working session. Today is the last day of Global Happy Cities Summit. Yesterday we had an amazing representation and a beautiful atmosphere as we worked together. I counted representatives from 13 or 14 countries. And it was intergenerational, intercultural, also interdenominational, and I'm sure several other categories, like different sectors. There were people from business sector and non-for-profit and government, young sort of citizens, so all came together. So yesterday we were discussing how to create programs to develop future leaders, more about the youth development, but also about adults development. Of course, how do we become leaders of the future? And today we are moving to a totally different subject, which is, of course, interrelated and connected. We talk about, okay, the organizations which are all sort of positively focused and oriented, which come together in our ecosystem. How can we really create an effective, global, action-oriented ecosystem where partners, institutional partners, could come together and work to create the results and to realize our missions? So this is the topic of our conversations. And when we think about what do we want to do together, the topic of this summit is creating happy cities. As you know, we are called the Living Cities Earth, and we'll make a quick presentation for people who are joining us for the first time or who will be watching the recording and will learn for the first time what we are doing. But you know that we are called Living Cities Earth, and the phenomenon of life is such multifaceted, right? And happiness and flourishing and thrivability, they're all part of being a living city, right? So this is what we focus. Okay, how can we cooperate, collaborate, sort of join our resources and create or help co-create 1,000+ happy cities on our beautiful planet? And Alexander, if you want to add a few thoughts from your side, and then I'll show a few slides and we'll start our day.
Fantastic. Well, I just wanted to stoke the fire again. So we have the fire going here right behind us. We were talking about igniting life. Ariel was sharing about that. And this is what has been going on all week in our program. And the idea here is that even though this will then conclude at this point with this session here, it doesn't mean it's over. There's this saying, was actually from Winston Churchill anyway, but he was saying, this is not the end. This is not even the beginning of the end, but perhaps it is the end of the beginning. And this framing, there's this old saying that we're the ones that we've been waiting for. We're not waiting any longer. This we are doing, and it's coming alive. And I think when we'll hear today from a bit of some of the stories that we'll be sharing, and what we've heard thus far yesterday from the leadership frames and those who have been bringing forward the ideas already in their communities and in their world, that no one's waiting anymore. We are doing this. So now, how do we link together, to link up, to lift up, to co-create, and to intervene? This is what's happening now. So the question is, jump on the bandwagon because it's going by, and this is the time to engage. The other aspect of this is that we're not waiting for the governments to provide the solutions, nor are we trying to do a revolution that says we're going to take over the governments. It's not about that. It's about creating complementary pathways for human coexistence with all of life on Earth, and doing so in ways that are not just about survival, which is important, or about sustainability, which is important, but about thrival and celebration of life, and about how do we create the conditions where we come alive, And again, this, I think, is the nodal points are these cities, the 10,000 cities on the planet. There are many more, smaller and larger. But the idea is that with these cities, not just within, but between, connecting the cities, learning from each other. Right here's a virtual city that we're engaging in. So I'm going to stop because I could keep going. But I want to take just one moment here at the very beginning of things, to put this in the present moment of context, because just within the past 24 hours, there has been a major incursion event in Russia, in Rostov. Marina is there, and this was the Wagner incursion. And the idea of these kind of things happening all the time at higher and lower levels of impact, this hits us globally. And to be aware of and empathetic with, to bring this into our hearts, but not let it stop us, gives us all the more reasons for creating thrivable engagements, human to human, human to nature, and human to future. So I would just like us to take a moment of silence. I'm going to actually then ding my bell, and we'll take a moment of silence to be with the planet and the people and the places that right now are under duress. Because what we bring is medicine. What we are is medicine. Ashe, Jaima, and Marina Demchenkov, we are with you and holding you in this time as we hold each other and as we co-create opportunities for thriving together, to human well together. I just saw a message from Marina, so I know she is here. And that's wonderful. All right. Thank you for holding space with us for humanity and for the different people and places and planet. Lev, back to you.
Thank you, Alexander. So again, welcome everyone. I saw that Marilyn has just joined, and Kimberly, Laura, hello Laura, and Gail, Bill Tim, hello to you, and Ferial and other colleagues, and some people are watching us through social media and YouTube. Welcome everyone. We are launching our final day of Global Happy Cities Summit. After 3 days of working on other topics, today we really have a session on how can we collaborate in the most effective way. And we're still looking for the best ways. Of course, we're a young global collective, while our co-founders, more than 60 of them, come with very diverse backgrounds and lots of experience. And you could see it just judging by the average experience we have here today on the screen. Those who see the gallery view, lots of experienced people. That's beautiful. We are still learning on a new level, right? Creating some meta practices and some new collaborative practices, also using the technology. Today we'll be working with the Miro board, which we did yesterday very successfully. So everybody is welcome to use the Miro board today, you can go directly, you don't need any accounts or anything like this, just using the link in our chat. It was already posted twice, but we could post it a couple of times again as new people join us. And you could actually make your comments, and I will quickly guide us through what the Miro board is. And this is a tool for collaboration. Most of us, of course, used it, but maybe not everyone. We started using it a couple of years ago. Since we're going through the short introduction and the warm welcome, I saw that Alexander has a fire in his background. It's almost a living fire, right? And we had a video sort of frame with a living fire. I have some beautiful natural backgrounds, thanks to Martin Knox and the whole team, Alexei Shklyaev and Irina, the designer, who also helped us to create the whole series of backgrounds with natural patterns. They're very beautiful. And so let me take maybe 10 minutes to show a few slides to give a background of where we're coming from and where we are going. Let's see. I think that should be it. Let's see. Yes. Do you see the blue and red slides?
Yes, looks wonderful.
All right. So the Living Cities Earth is the organization, a global collective. It's a horizontally organized, sort of self-org based structure. We're nurturing and co-creating together. Today, we talk about our global action ecosystem, basically how the institutional partners and institutional co-founders really come together in a more cohesive way and create tangible results. This is our program. It's very simple. We have some stories from Happy Cities where we will share our personal experiences, our stories. What does being in a happy city mean to us? I'm very lucky. Yesterday, I saw some global ranking, and before yesterday, another global ranking. And cities where I lived throughout my last 15, 20 years are all in top 10. I didn't choose them on purpose based on those rankings, but it turns out that both, Vancouver and San Diego and Seattle and Amsterdam and many, many others, they are quite amazing cities, and each one of us has his or her own experience. So we'll share what does it mean a happy city from our personal perspective. Then we go to a more sort of professional part where we talk about the institutional partners, the organizations we represent, maybe projects or initiatives. So what we do, what's our purpose, what are our goals, what's our strategy, what are the resources we could bring to realizing our common mission of, creating living cities on a global scale. And then finally at 16:30 Amsterdam time, so I'm in Seattle now, it's 20 past 6 in the morning, so it will be in about an hour. We will go to the main sort of part when we will work with the Miro board most intensively, and we'll think about how do we build our ecosystem, what are the processes, the procedures, the infrastructures, the culture, agreements, etc., that we do together. What are our events, projects that we do in our organizations that we could also combine in our sort of larger framework. This is a special sort of Miro board for today. It's relatively simple. You could click on the link in the Zoom chat, and I'll ask our colleagues to post it again. You go there through your browser, and basically you can write on those stickers, and we have 6 fields today. So the top 3 fields correspond to our agenda. So the insights you get from the story barn, which we'll move to in about 9 minutes. So what makes a city a happy city? Whatever you are, any insights and ideas, you just write on those stickers, you click on them, and you write. It's very simple. And the second, the greenish in the middle part, when we represent our organizations, we could also write there, so what's the purpose, strategy, goals, and capacities that our organizations bring to our living ecosystem, which will help us to create 10,000 living happy cities eventually. The third part on the right, top right, is how do we actually coordinate and collaborate to create the effective global action ecosystem. On the bottom, we have 3 other fields. The blue one on the left is what do we actually need to realize our mission of creating living, happy, thriving, flourishing cities. Or whom do we want to invite to join us? So any ideas, what do we need, or whom do we want to invite? We write on those blue stickers. In the middle, we have...
Can I just mention that we are seeing the screen that has the Global Happy Cities Summit overview on it. We're not seeing the Miro that you are talking about.
You don't? Oh.
No, not that one. We're seeing
me switch it off and switch it on again. Thank you for sharing. Important. How about now?
That's the right one. Perfect.
Okay. So you see there are 6 fields. I mentioned the top 3. They correspond to the agenda, and the bottom 3 fields are from the left to the right. So on the left, what do we need to realize our mission? Any ideas, write it there. Or whom do we want to invite to join us? Also on the blue stickers. In the middle, how to make our collaboration attractive and effective, right? There are thousands of wonderful organizations which make life better on a global, regional, or local level today. If we want to invite them, and we have been so far pretty successful in attracting and engaging new partners, but what do we want as a collective, right? What would Gail, for example, need? Gail Taylor, hello, or Ferial, right? Or Marilyn, or Alexander, or any one of us. Anna Luz, welcome to you. So what do we need to share with other organizations to make this collaboration attractive and effective? So we could write it on those stickers. And in the bottom right corner, throughout our presentation and discussions today, you could also go there and write what projects, programs, events, and activities do you plan in your organization in 2023? For example, David Gershon, with his team, the Empowerment Institute, they started the Peace on Earth by 2030 project, right? And there is a sort of a marathon going for next 99 days with World Unity Week. He would write, okay, this is a project we're running, and we would write Global Happy Cities Summit in September, etc., etc. And then we see the map of all the different activities. Olivier, welcome, bienvenue. We are just discussing, if you see our Miro board, where we could work together to co-create the results of our workshop today. And so at the bottom right corner, we could write throughout all of our discussions. You could go there using the link and write the events, programs, projects that your organization is working on this year. Then we'll have the overview across of all of our organizations. If you have any questions, it's very simple. I'm not a tech guy at all, but you just click on any of those stickers and you're right. This is how Miro board works. So we have 5 minutes left of our short, brief introduction. So most of us have seen already those beautiful patterns that Martin Knox has created for Living Cities Earth as our new sort of visual style, new visual identity. Marilyn, thank you very much for connecting Martin with Living Cities and Living Cities with Martin. He's been amazing, such a real wizard, right, from the north. And while I was looking at all of those patterns, I was asking myself, there is so much nature. It's beautiful. I love it. There are even some of my pictures, I guess, here as well. But where are the people? Because Living Cities Earth is not about nature per se, right? We are not the ecological organization per se. We're about engaging people's potential, creative and co-creative potential. So where are the people? And it turns out that Martin's backgrounds and Martin's sort of images are really the background, and who comes on top of it are the people. And as we all remember who participated for the Earth Day Summit, which we held a couple of months ago, we had about 92 actually speakers and experts who came together for this beautiful event. And thank you, Anna Luz, and thank you, Alexander and Marilyn, and everybody who was there, co-creating our beautiful event. We had representatives from 154 cities and 45 countries, and it was really a warm-up event. It was the first one we organized on a global scale, so it was nice to see. And thanks to all the partners, everybody's looking for his or her logo, and we have, of course, the Learning Planet Festival. Olivier, you've been with us, even though you've been extremely busy at the time, and the Earthwise, and the Laszlo Institute, and Integral City, and One Planet, and all of our wonderful co-founders and strategic partners. Together, we've been able to organize such a beautiful event. As you remember, the final outcome right? All those smart people globally, they came together, discussed for 3 days, for 15 hours a day, various subjects, how to live happily and sort of prosperously on our beautiful planet. And the result was that we do have a lot of challenges, and love is the answer to most of them. Internally, interpersonally, ecosystemically, if we learn to experience this state of mind, if we create this energy in our relationships and in our ecosystemic sort of initiatives, this will really provide us with the wisdom, with the energy, with the resources to move forward. We are going through the Global Happy Cities Summit, which is really the beginning of a Happy Cities Marathon, which will go for 3 months until the end of September, and we'll have sort of the expanded version of Global Happy Cities Summit in the end of September, together with the Peace Week, etc., etc. So Living Cities Earth today, it's the very beginning, as Alexander said. We're at the beginning of a beautiful journey together, and we'll grow both in our capacity and in the complexity, in the level of complexity of challenges we tackle successfully together. And we are starting, and we have 100 years plus to go. So definitely this initiative will go beyond our personal lives. So we will all sort of get reborn, if that's what happened, right, in the Buddhist and other sort of philosophies and traditions. But the initiative will go on with all of our energy, wisdom, and ideas being combined. When we think about who we are as an organization, we realize that we are definitely a catalyst, and we have seen throughout the years of working with people in the cities, as I said, many co-founders have been active in this area for years, and maybe 20, 30, some of us 40 and more years. So we have seen that we act as a catalyst. We connect with the local leaders from local governments, local non-for-profits, local communities, regional and global communities, and we catalyze this action. We are definitely an integrator. We bring together like-minded people and organizations to enhance our sort of collective capacity. We don't we do allow ourselves to dream big. So we're not afraid of dreaming. And Marilyn could attest to it. She has seen how we really expand our horizons, but then we go and do. As Alexander said, we are not only a think tank, we are also a do tank, and also we are a link tank. So we connect and interconnect people's initiatives and organizations. And we do many other things, facilitating really the positive change eventually in 10,000 cities. What we do, we inspire, we interconnect, we empower leaders, and it's not the beautiful, dozen or even 100 of us who will change the world by themselves, by ourselves. We connect to people on the ground in different countries, regions, and cities, and eco-villages, and we support them in the changes they're making already on a daily basis. We help them to expand the horizons, to use our frameworks, our integral approach. We try to support people as they grow in their maturity, in their connection with the universe. And we do so also by using some scientific-based methods, doing a lot of research in the cities, in the society, by educating, consulting, communicating, organizing, weaving, measuring, etc., etc. And we don't forget to laugh and celebrate. Because if we get too serious, we'll get bored, we'll lose energy, and we'll stop doing what we do in a couple of years. But as we laugh, celebrate, and don't take ourselves too seriously, we have a long way to go. I see that I have to finish shortly, so quickly let me browse through a couple of slides. We happen to be the largest integral city development community on Earth. It wasn't our goal, right? But it just happened that as we integrated organizations and individuals who have been active in this field for years, we turned out to be that's who we are, and this is how we position ourselves. And working with the integral city development, as we mentioned in the beginning, we work on several levels. We work on the level of each person, so educating, development of each person, integral development, but also on the level of organizations, communities, families, and different collectives, on the level of cities as complex living ecosystems, and then on the level of bioregions, and then our sort of whole planet. These are some of our co-founders, not all of them. We're growing pretty fast. So last month, those are some of the new co-founders who joined just in June. So today it's about 62, if I'm not mistaken, co-founders running this place. And that's basically who we are. And I think that the vision is very simple. So if you remember, if somebody is watching us for the first time, if you want to remember one thing, I would suggest think about our vision. It's 10,000 living cities on one living planet. The planet we are all aware of, so we take care of our planet from whichever perspective and place where we find ourselves. And 10,000 living cities, by statistics, according to statistics, there are 10,000 cities on our planet. We learned it actually about a year ago. We didn't think about how many cities are on the planet, but there are 10,000 cities. And our perspective and our dream, as Alexander mentioned, is to make those cities fully alive, which means to help each person in those cities to be fully alive, and all of our organizations, communities, and our bioregions to also go on this enlivening journey. What we mean by a living city is a place where people could feel fully alive, where they can human well, right? Unlock and manifest their creative potential, and also live healthy, happy lives in harmony with each other and with nature. To do this, we need education, we need various support programs, we need to work with infrastructure, and everything, the culture, everything which we find in the integral approach. Our mission is basically how we get to our vision, right? Is to work, as I mentioned before, with the local, regional, and global leaders and organizations. So we don't change every city sort of personally, right? But we connect with people on the ground, and we inspire, interconnect, and empower them to make those changes through a variety of means, which are listed here. We can send the presentation later. I will not go through our strategy right now, only one point. Who is the actor? The actor is the collective. We call ourselves the global collective, and it's comprised from those global leaders like Anna Luz, like Olivier, like Marilyn, like Alexander, like Gail, people who already impact the world on a global scale. Some of us impact the world on a global or local scale, on the regional or local scale. And by bringing them together, either as co-founders or as what we call an ecosystem of institutional partners, the Earth Garden, this is where we get the main driving force, right, through our collaboration and interconnection. And those are the people and organizations who together devise and then realize our mission and our strategy. We work on a planetary level using the integral approach and being, as I said, a global collective. I will not go through our objectives at this point or the structure. We use the work groups to focus our attention in various areas, using the Sociocracy 3.0 as our main management sort of system. Those are the meetings which happen on a daily or weekly basis in different groups. We bring together all of the projects we are connected to in one sort of ecosystem, and this is what we'll be discussing today. And finally, the picture most of us have seen already from Robert Fischer, who is the president of Living Cities Earth Association. We're registered in beautiful Switzerland, in Zurich. And this is where we are going next week, I think, right, for our annual co-founders camp. So we'll have 4 to 5 actual days to work on the strategy for this and the coming years. And on to our flight, Alexander, on to you. Let me pass it on to you, and perhaps you would be kindly leading our story barn, if you share what it is and how we can together get there. Thank you.
Mev, thank you so much. Keep the slides for a moment. Go back to the previous one where we can see the schedule for today. Just to go over this, we need to get going. We have a lot to cover here because we have no time to rush. So this means to take the time that we have to be together, to hear the stories, to listen to each other, and to then make the empathetic connection. So this, in part, is what we're going to be doing today. This is going to be a listening conversation and a weaving conversation. And let me explain a little bit how it's intended to build. So we start now, in just a moment, as soon as I be quiet, and I will in a moment, with a story barn. And what is the story about? The people who are mainly here with us today are people who have initiatives for making the world a better place in different ways. What is your story about what brings you alive? What makes you feel that this is the happy place? And what is your happy place in the context of our society? So it may be a city, it may be a small community, it may be nature, but how is it that you are most brought alive? These are your personal stories of enlivenment. What brings you alive? But hopefully in the context of connection. So make it a story somehow about connection. So this is what we'll listen to from your heart, your story, some little vignettes. So in our second part, we're going to put our professional hats on. And that's where it says open mic. And there we are going to, each of us are going to go another round, and we're going to be saying, in my organization, we're doing this. This is how we connect with making the world a better place. And the invitation here is that we listen to the personal stories, we listen to the professional stories, and we think, how are we connected to these stories? Because the third part that we get to, how could we create 10,000 happy cities together, the open workshop, this is where we're looking at a global action ecosystem. How do we emerge that? And we do that in this session by listening to each other and maybe taking notes and saying, oh, wow, what I just heard, for example, from Olivier about the Learning Planet Institute, which he's going to tell us about, I hope, is so powerful because that connects to what I want and what I'm doing in what ways. And then we bring that out in that last session where we say, I see a connection in this way. I see a connection. And you don't only have to talk about the connection you see about your organization. You may have heard from 2 or 3 other organizations about what they're doing and the people involved and say, wow, isn't there a connection here among these? That's what we're going to be doing in the last session, looking for the connections, looking for the ways that we can create that synergy, that living ecosystem of not just solutions, but of ways of humaning well together. All right, let's go back to our collective screen. Thank you for sharing. And before I get going, let me just get a show from those who have their screens on. And if you don't, and you want to participate, let me know by putting your screen on. If you are kind of getting it, but not really, it's this. If you're like confused, it's this. If you're like ready to go, it's this. How you doing? Okay, Laura's kind of getting it there. Okay. All right, so we'll call on Laura first. I'm kidding. All right, we'll flow with it. But I'm going to facilitate this. And again, this is just stories from the heart. This is not your professional stories. So what is it that brings you most alive? I would like to start, Marilyn, if it's okay with you. And after Marilyn, I'm going to bring on Ferial, and then we'll move. Please, Marilyn.
Thank you, Alexander. Well, the story I tell will be about Abbotsford, which was a small city I lived in Canada, and a place that I really noticed and experimented with many of the patterns that I started to notice belong to cities as complex, adaptive living integral systems. So our Chamber of Commerce used to do advances way back a couple of decades ago. They actually called them advances and not retreats. So they were kind of pioneers. And at one particular retreat or advance, I listened after we had done some scenario planning for several days. I listened to one of the mayors of our area say, oh my goodness, what I see is the worst possible scenario is if we do nothing. So he could see that status quo was not an option he wanted to live with. And when he said that, my heart almost leaped out of my body. And I've never forgotten the depth of his insight after just listening to the community, really the thought leaders of the community from what I call the 4 voices. And he realized that there was something we must do other than just the status quo. So that's the little story I'll share because it certainly made me realize that I was living in a very alive place.
Igniting. Beautiful. Thank you, Marilyn. Marielle, what's your favorite word? Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So what you will also not know about me is my name actually means festival time. So so it's feria in the Mediterranean region in the Middle East. It's ferial. So that said, I'm going to talk to you about the city of festivals. I'm going to talk to you about Edinburgh, the city that I lived in for a very long time now. I moved the last 2 years. I've moved outside of Edinburgh, so I'm about 25 minutes outside. However, it's still a city that is very, very dear to my heart because it is the city that I think ignited in me as well that that fun aspect, right? So when I first moved from South Africa, Cape Town in South Africa, to Scotland, I came here to work with an organization where we were organizing groups from all around the world to come and participate in the Fringe Festival. So those of you who don't know, the Fringe Festival is one of the largest festivals in the world. And it is like Edinburgh is sleeping, and when the Fringe Festival comes, everything is alive. I'm talking about every elevator, every little room, everything everywhere becomes a venue for, you know, performance. So you're talking about a city that really has a population of about 450,000 people. And during this Fringe Festival, we are housing up to 5 million people. You know, so can you imagine what happens then? The world flocks to Edinburgh, and I saw this, and I was in the center of this, and I raised my 2 daughters in this, and I saw how for them, for myself anyway, it really brought me to this system change work that I do today, that it was about that the world came and I could have this kind of little picture of the world. And I saw my daughters being raised up in this and igniting within them that desire to be these better citizens. You know, one of them now is a music producer, and the other one is just finishing off her degree in marine biology. So looking for the secrets in the sea that can heal us. And so that for me is my story. I'm going to end that there and say that I think when we bring people together, when they're having fun, when they're eating food, when they're sharing culture, and when they're dancing and laughing and singing. And so that's the other thing I did in my other life. I was a professional, you know, in singing and dancing and all of this. And so this was just like, wow, like, could we imagine that like doing that in our cities could perhaps keep that happy, alive, living, being thing, alive. So that's my story. Thank you.
Beautiful story. Another story of vibrance. Fantastic. Okay, I'm taking some notes here. And again, if you're looking for themes too, let's see if we can find these red threads in these stories. That what is it that's connecting these things? So I am now I'm going to tell you a few people ahead of time so that you can get ready here. I'm sorry I didn't tell Anna Luz that she's going to be next, but and then after that, Olivier, because we haven't heard from, you know, we have a wonderful representation here of women's voices, much more than men, thank goodness. And then we have Olivier, and after that, Gail, and then we'll move beyond that. So Anna Luz.
Thank you for giving the heads up so I could tell my sons not to scream to their friends. Yeah, it's Saturday evening here. Very nice to be here with all of you. Behind me, this is Mauritius. So you can actually, if you were to listen very quietly, you can hear the waves of the ocean. Beautiful. And soon you will hear the bats. So just on the presence, nature here, as we're talking about living cities. What's interesting and kind of surprised myself, you know, I was listening to the story, Brian, and what your question evoked to me. And I asked myself that question: what is a living city and a happy city? What does it mean for me? Where it took me is that I realized that if I go to my happy city place, I go inside. And in my meditations, there's a place where I then go within. And this is where I meet the city of humanity. And in that city, there are no divisions. There's nothing is imposed. It's almost like the essence of every person is in that city, and nature is there. And I meet the guardians of humanity there. I feel the ancestors there. I'm aware of the children as well who are not yet born. And I realize that's always, it's an inner plane for me. And I thought, how incredible if 10,000 living cities could become these happy cities. What if that? Because I think probably all of us have some way of experiencing that inner city of light, in a city of love, in a city of who we are. But how incredible if together we can make this a living reality. So living cities are the living expressions also of those inner cities. And frankly, I haven't experienced many of them in that way. I have been lived in many different countries, many cities, but overall my experience of living in cities, I lived in Canberra, I lived in in Australia, in Leiden. I lived in Pretoria in South Africa. I live in Tamarand now. I lived in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, in Wiegen. So I lived in Stockholm in Sweden. But if I sum up all those city experience, often it was cold in terms of the human experience. Or it wasn't so natural to just walk up to someone and say, "Hey, how are you doing today? And so great to be with you." As if you always have to go through this formal introduction. And so yes, I'm here to make happy living cities a reality with all of you. Thank you.
Olivier.
Thank you. Well, if you all listen very carefully, maybe you will hear the voice of Alexander coming from a room a few meters away from me, and a bit further away there's Pavel, who should be joining us, because we just had 2 or 3 days of working together and meetings and things like this. So I'm very happy to join you online. I couldn't do it earlier. I was brought up as a kid, I shared this with Lev, in an international school near Paris called Saint-Germain-en-Laye. And so since I'm a kid, 3 years old, I was always with people from every countries of Europe and then a few other places. And I think this is at the heart of who I am ever since. And then when I was 11 and when I was 19, twice I almost died and went through very bad accidents. So since then, I think I've never tried to separate my personal life from my work life. I mean, it was really very important, as I'm giving a new chance this time, to make sure that whatever I do is very deep. So I didn't always succeed, but most of the time I do. So if I bring this in the context of a city, I'm based in Paris. And what I like in this city is that there's a UNESCO and OECD and Global Partnership for Education and the Paris Agreement and so many things which are not ideal, but connected to the world. And the people who really make me alive is for the past 15 years or so. I've been meeting people from every country, always working in the field of education, health, rights, environment, giving their life to doing things for a better world. So you see the challenges keep growing, but I've always seen so many people involved. And I think this is my family. So it's very difficult for me to relate to one city in particular. I'm taking the other step. I'm not coming into my inner self. I guess I've done it for very many years with literature and reading and discovering hundreds of books from so many different cultures, and not only from cultures today, but from cultures from the past, not necessarily from the future, too scarcely. But this has been nurturing me a lot, these living books and living person. And so, I mean, yeah, so I have cities like Calcutta, very warm. The human dimension in Calcutta, the place is very tough, it's very crowded, it's very busy, but people are smiling. Or many other places like this that are deep in my heart. And I'll stop there, but I think it's really the permanent interconnection with so many people around the world who are family. Like Alexander, I hadn't seen in years in person. Pavel, I see once in a while, and a few others, but thousands of these ladies, Kiran Birseti, Runa Khan, so many people. And okay, I think I stop there. It's not exactly the happy city, but it's a seed of a happy city network.
Perfect. It what brings you alive, and that's what we're exploring.
Yeah, that brings me alive for sure. And then I'll tell you what I do. Notably, I do a festival for Ferial, but I think this is in the business second part of our conversation, so I'll let you know afterwards.
We'll definitely want to be getting into that. So exactly. Then we'll see. All of us will put our hats on, our professional hats on, and say, okay, so now this is what I'm doing about it professionally. But we're not quite there yet. So let's continue now. I'm going to turn to Gail. And after Gail, I will turn to Kimberly and then Sonia. Okay, Gail. Gail, you're mutable.
There I go. I'm just saying that listening to everybody, it's like, oh yes, that's a memory I have. That's something I really appreciate. I think what I want to talk about today is San Francisco. And it's the first time I ever realized a living city. I thought, this is a living city. And it's a happy city the first time I went. The second time it was like, I realized something different. She's moody. She's moody this time. And so I began really understanding the idea of a breathing city that conspires together in many ways and brings this joy or happiness or moodiness, and today the sadness for San Francisco and what's going on with it, and how it is realizing now that it didn't have enough feedback loops in place and enough governance to understand what can happen if a city grows too fast and grows in one way, in one direction, with all these entrepreneurs and very wealthy billionaires who decided they could make the city what they wanted, and along with the fires and other things. So it's really very precious of how we think about cities as living and as breathing entities, and what we can do to engage the whole city in understanding how it works as an entity. The other thing I want to say about personal happiness was in the 70s, there was a whole new games. Did anybody else enjoy new games? There are some books out called New Games, but what we did in Kansas City is parks all over the city. We had earth balls. That's when the earth ball of 8-foot balls were introduced, and the parks would have new games, and that's where all ages would come together. Babies. I remember once with a nun who was in her 80s with her habit on and flying across the ground, and we were doing all kinds of silly games and everything, but it was all together. And just doing these kinds of play, the festival is such a beautiful story. Play is really, really important. And the motto of New Games was play hard, play fair, nobody hurt. And man, we did play hard, and we did play, and we did have fun. The laughter, the appreciation. That's where group sit came from. Have you ever done a group sit where you each sit in each other's lap? And we had, I think at one time, 200 people sitting for maybe 30 seconds before it collapsed. But these kinds of engagements where you're touching each other, you're playing together, you're working together. So that's a really fun memory, and I would like New Games to come back in our cityness.
Thank you, Gail. Wow, yes. And after all, isn't this about serious fun? We were talking here at with Olivier about in this Living Planet Institute about meaning fun, having meaning fun experiences. Not meaningful, meaning fun. So yes. So we will, but we're not getting into the institutions yet. So Kim is about to have to go. So we're passing the remaining few moments on to her. Kim.
Thank you. I'm really grateful to be here. You asked where people come alive, and I feel it's like in spaces like this, caring community, where there's an awareness of humaning well, which is why I love and appreciate being invited into Living Cities in that framework, where that's in our conscious awareness all the time. And along with all the syntony spheres that Alexander talks about so lovely, because to me, humaning well is, being in relationship with everything else that's in our cities, right, or anywhere, the nature and ancestors and cosmos, everything. And I just want to mention serious fun. Like a long time ago, I used to be work and role as an editor-in-chief of Changing Technology magazines. And we thought back then we really should have magazines called Serious Fun because it's nice to keep that type of lightness and atmosphere while we go about our daily work. So with that, I'm going to go and be back pretty soon. Thank you.
Bring us with you when you go there, please.
You are all welcome. It is open to all, but maybe next Saturday.
Next Saturday, but bring us with you in your spirit, in your being, and in your presence, please.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. Okay, so we anyway are soon to be wrapping up, and we have just a few more people. So now that she left, my screen completely changed. Did that happen to you too? Oh, no, Sonia, you were next. But before you go, let me mention just who's then I would like to call on next. So if Alexei is reconnecting, I think Sergey is here as well, and then we have Chantal and Laura. Just a reminder of what we are talking, the prompt is. What are the experiences of community that bring you alive, that make you feel connected? What are those things that bring you most alive? And if you can connect them to the cities, great. But what is it that brings you most alive? Those experiences, personal, not professional, personal. So Sonia, you're next.
Yes, hi everyone. For me, it's like great pleasure to be here. And Lev, thank you very much for short notice, but invitation to be here is like something very surprise for me. So just a year ago, I moved to Berlin, and I feel like the city changed me every day to the better. So I like habits that I just found in myself, for example, separate garbage. But I'd like to answer your question. So this morning, I just woke up and went to the market. This market has been opened more than 200 years. And I feel so happy in this place. Maybe it's a little bit too cheesy metaphor, but I like the sense of market. I like people who has own cellar, but nobody, like, there are very friendship, loveliness, and very, very confidence. And I think that this model of like local market is a model of very happy city. And this is place, there is no place for aggression, no violence, and everyone is equal, something like that. It's so emotional, but in the next part, I will tell you about our project and hope it will be like more professional way.
What a great framing. Yeah, the local market. How nice. Very cool. So we're going to go a little bit over on this first section of time, but that's all right. But this is perfect. We're just taking a couple of minutes to say what it is that brings you alive. So if it's all right, I'm going to be doing it in the following order here. We have Chantal, if you can share, and also please do, I know we're going to do our professional hats later, but let people know where you are in terms of your representation of the mass people. And then after Chantal, we'll go with Laura, and then Alexei, and then Sergio, and we're done. Chantal.
Good morning, everyone. I am joining you from Halton Hills, Ontario, which is near Toronto in Canada. And I just, I'm a week out now from a profound ceremony that I was part of. And it really, I feel like that ties into the question of where do you feel most alive, or what situations bring you to life. And it was a blend of being in service and holding others and supporting them in fully showing up in what their work is. And then at the same time being held and supported by the group. So it was a very unique experience to me, where everybody had a very specific role that they were playing, and everyone was acknowledged, and all the parts were equally celebrated, whether it was delivering water or it was being more focal in the ceremony. It was really a lived experience of everyone playing a part and being part of the whole, and recognizing that without the different pieces, that it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be what it is. And And yeah, it was a lifting up. So it was a water ceremony, and so it was lifting up the waters. And it was like this lifting up of ourselves. And yeah, it was beautiful. So thinking about cities and how that can apply, it's how do we lift up and celebrate and support all the people and all the pieces and the animals and the plants, and really see the people and not just people, but all living beings, see them and appreciate them and celebrate. And yeah, that's my contribution for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chantal. And can you just share one moment in terms of your position in the government? We know we're going to get into this more formally in a moment, just for people to know also.
Yeah, so I'm recently elected town councillor with Halton Hills. So I'm in that municipal decision-making space.
So good also context in terms of knowing the kind of things, but we're going to get into that in a moment when we get now putting back our professional hats. And so thank you for sharing that. That's a little sort of a taste ahead. Laura, do you feel sufficiently oriented to share a little bit about where you come alive?
Sure. Well, I was invited here today. Oh, my dog is barking, by Anna Luz. The topic for me brings me to Damanhur, which is probably the most alive alternate city on the planet. I cannot believe my dog has decided to bark right now. Are you hearing her? Anyway, and actually Shama Viola, one of the ambassadors from Damanhur, is coming next week to visit us. So, and I like the ambitious nature of this group because we're all about creating an American version of Damanhur. Hold on a sec. Erin, could you let her out, please? Crazy. We're pretty super ambitious too. So our goal is to create what Falco said was we need to get a city of light on every continent or we don't make it. And I think I found the right place, the United States. So this whole concept of connecting up the cities that are progressive and are led by second-tier thought leaders is near and dear to my heart. And I'm really just glad to meet you all and be here. And I feel like I'm in a group of kindred souls when we talk about the future of our cities and the future of the planet.
Thank you so much, Laura. Yes, I met Falco when I went to visit Damanhur a number of years ago, and was shown the caves. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. Alexia, I'm not sure if your audio is going, because it says you're connecting to audio. So I'm going to do Lev's wonderful technique of counting to 3. And if you are able to connect still with your audio, then we will hear from you. It doesn't sound like it, does it? No, I'm not even going to count.
I wouldn't hear you.
No. Can't even hear us. Look at that. See,
I can pick up from...
What?
I can share my experience.
Could you please, Lev?
Yes, sure. Lots of points, but I'll continue with the topic that Anna Luz has started, that Happy City for me is also very much inside. And pretty much every city I lived in maybe a dozen or more, and they become alive when I become alive. So when I'm connected with myself, surprisingly, everything around becomes more alive, more interconnected. It's easier to connect with people. They start to smile when I'm sort of smiling in my heart. And this sort of magic or alchemy, it's happening in very different cultures, in Europe, in Americas, in Asia, all the same. So for me, cities become a happy place when we are connected to ourselves, when we trust ourselves, and then somehow we start trusting other people in the world. And when we are connected with people and we trust them, somehow the interplay happens, the game of life, the flow of energy, the co-creation. And this was such an amazing discovery maybe 10 years ago when we started working with the cities after reading Marilyn's book. Marilyn, thank you again, Integral City. So That's one, I guess. And the second part, I want to mention education and students. When I lived and studied in Rennes in France and in many other university villages and cities, when you have a lot of young people being creative, co-creative, celebrating life as well, somehow this young energy, and it doesn't depend on age, of course, right? All of us were very young at heart. So having people celebrating life, learning, right, and sharing and co-creating really makes the energy flow. And for me, a happy city or thriving city is a city where the energy flows freely, creative energy, natural energy, all kinds of energy. So a city with a free flow of energy to me is a happy city. Thank you.
Thank you, Lev. I'm going to go briefly, but before I go, and I will wrap and also then do the next transition. I'm not going to actually wrap in terms of music. I'll just wrap up this session. You don't want to hear me rap in terms of music. But I will now see if, I think Sergio is behind the Living Cities Earth. And is that correct, Lev?
I think Sergio is doing all the technical support. I'm not sure he'll be able to join and speak.
We want everybody's voice, but okay, no, let's not push that. Okay, so then I guess I will do the transition here. So what brings me alive is very similar. I'm tempted to draw my red threads here, but it is places where I feel the soul of the planet bursting forth, where I feel that here there is life. And I can walk into, sometimes it's a forest. I walk into it, it's like, wow, the peace, the harmony, the sense of belonging. And it happens in cities as well, where there's a lively conversation happening here, just down the street. I'm walking past it and I can't help overhear it, and I can stop. And then there are other things that are happening that make me feel, I see the children in the park. I see things happening in all of these things that bring a smile to my heart. This is the places. Now, there's plenty of things that don't bring smiles to my heart in cities as well. And Luz also pointed out, often there's dirt and there is sense of actually fear and distrust. Those are not the happy places, but they're not the places where spirit lives. Those places in cities where spirit lives, I think those are sacred places. Finding those, making more of those conditions. You can't make spirit live there. No, it's not that, but you can create the conditions. That's, I think, a good transition for our next round that we'll be going to. And I think perhaps, Lev, we could take a break between this next round and the following one, but right now we'll just move on to this next one. It'll also give us a chance to reflect a little bit. What we have been talking so much about here is celebrating life and about those places that bring us alive because they are alive. And when we are coming alive, we make them come alive. And this is about the living cities. And by the way, Living Cities Earth is an address. It's like Living Cities Earth. Then you have Living Cities Paris, and you have Living Cities Port Louis, and you have Living Cities in all over, right? So these are the different addresses that we have. So bringing ourselves alive with nature, with each other. What is it that your organization does in this regard? And now let's listen, and listen with the ears of weavers, so that when we come to the next round, we can say, you know, here's what I saw as the connections. And remember, it's not only connections with you and your work, but you might see connections among others that you want to share that others might not have seen. So we're going to go more or less in a similar order here, just so that people get a chance who haven't spoken to move through this. So I'm going to go through again and call again first on Marilyn. What can you share about, if you put on your professional hats, so what is it that you are doing or involved with, projects, institutions, organizations that are seeking to address this, this quest?
Thanks for the question, Alexander. You know, the question of aliveness was something that I used when I just started this quest. And I used to call a circle for dialogue when I would enter the community, and we would ask the questions of what's working well around here, which is the same as asking, what brings you alive? What doesn't work so well? And we wouldn't spend so long on this, but this would be like, what doesn't make you feel fully alive? And I would also ask people to think of the last time that they were together with people and what made them feel fully alive, who was there, what was happening. And I love all the responses that people gave to the last question, because really all those various scenarios were aspects of what made people feel fully alive in the city. I think this was deepened for me on a professional level. I remember I was driving off to the airport in Vancouver to go to a conference, and I had all my slides and everything. I was listening to the radio, and it turned out that James Lovelock was being interviewed live on CBC. And I heard the interviewer say that after they had gone through all of the terrible things that humans had done to Earth, well, I guess, Dr. Lovelock, you don't have a very high opinion of humans. And he said, on the contrary, humans are Gaia's reflective organs. And I just thought, oh my God, I had to turn off the road. It just like, made every hair on the back of my head stand up. And what I realized in that moment of revelation was, oh, we've been evolved. We're not just accidents or incidentals. We have actually been evolved by Gaia for a purpose. And it was a purpose that was even greater than I had imagined up until then. And when I heard this, all at once I could see, oh, cities are the organs. Our organizations are organelles, and individuals are like cells. So I could see the fractalness of aliveness in the city. And I felt so special and honored and amazed that I had been evolved. And so this is one of the reasons that I really feel I'm often called to be the voice of the city. I talk about the 4 voices of the city, which I've learned from bees, but we'll talk about that later. But to be the voice of the city when either it's ignored when we think about what is alive on the planet. So we often talk about individuals and organizations. We talk about the nation and we skip to the planet. And I always say, well, yes, but in between, those organizations and the nations, there's the cities. And the cities and their eco-regions, you can really see those from space. So that was another aspect for me that said, it's very important that we understand the evolutionary nature of cities, the actual light that can be seen from space, and the energy and wealth that has been accumulated in cities. How can it now be of service to the aliveness of the whole planet? So those are some of the questions I've asked throughout my seeking to appreciate and actually amplify the value of cities in service to life on the planet, in service to the planet's life herself.
Marilyn, before we move away from or on from you to the next speaker, is there an organization aside from Living Cities Earth that you would like to mention as a vehicle for, or maybe there are a couple of them that are the vehicles for this? In terms of what are you associated with? This is a time also to be able to say, this is, I'm working on it through this project or through this organization.
Sure, thank you, Alexander. Well, I just came back. I think this is my 4th conference in the last month. So the first one I was at was Integral Europe Conference. And so these are all the integral thinkers of the world. And I brought them together in a book. And I had brought them together in a little e-graphic book called Accelerating City Change in a VUCA World. And that book is published by somebody I think is very special in serving cities, and that's Paul Van Schaik. And he has a whole series called Urban Hub. And I could highly recommend that. So integral thinkers are part of the group that doesn't necessarily think about cities. So when I turn up there, I do bring the voice of the city. But while I was there, I also reconnected with some people that I thought were bringing special views to aliveness in the city. One of them was Dr. Wanda Krause, who was from Royal Roads University, where I am still listed as the faculty, and she teaches global leadership. So I really think the whole way that Royal Roads teaches action research is really important. I was also just at the EcoCity Builders Summit in London. So EcoCity Builders would be a group I would point to. That was started by the architect Richard Register, and he was the person who coined the term eco-city, an ecologically alive city. So I think that's a very important group. Well, there I also connected with ICLEA. So ICLEA is the world's largest association for mayors, and mayors are not concerned by the aliveness of their cities. I don't think they're going to be easily reelected. I also was connecting with EcoLeaves, which is a European cluster of urban-focused associations. And the other group that I'm thinking about is Gaia Education and the Global Eco-Village Network. So they're not technically cities, but I think of the city as sort of the generic term for the human habitat. And these are all at different scales. So there's a handful.
Wonderful. By the way, I'm sorry I was coughing without my mic being off. Sorry, but fantastic, and thank you very much for sharing also some of those action contexts. I'm going to put here the link again for the Miro board, just to remind people that if they want, while they're listening, can be also sharing and filling out on the different places there. So Laura, yes, I know you're going to go, but is there a chance? We'll put it on the Miro. Is there anything you want to say before you go to share with us? That was the hope, that you could share with us before you go some of your professional engagements around this. And you're mutable? You're still mutable.
Realize that, sorry. We've got an event here today. I'm going to pop my short bio in. I didn't mean to hit send. And really quickly, I'm the executive director of the Oracle Institute. We have a campus here in Independence, Virginia, in an exceedingly sacred site. That's the New River behind me. That's the oldest river in the Western Hemisphere, probably the oldest river in the world. We're building the Peace Pentagon. That's our central headquarters. We're fulfilling Barbara Marx Hubbard's dream of building a peace room as sophisticated as a war room. We're a think tank. We study the nexus between politics, religion, and conscious evolution. I'm an evolutionary leader. And that's how Anna Luce and I got close. We were at the Sedona retreat in March. There's so much to our work. I'm an attorney. I'm about to sue the county for the third time. Anyway, I'm rambling because I've got to get off and get to this event we have today. It's actually a really cool event. We have another cool event in July. Fumi John Stewart will be here. May Peace Prevail. We've got a peaceful medicine wheel. We're going to be activating the Peace Pentagon. Tehil Sharma, who's the URI Director of North America, will be here. The United Religions Initiative Ambassador to the UN will be here. So we've been up and running for about 20 years, relocated to Southwestern Virginia to try to lessen polarity. We like to experiment with the spectrum of consciousness and trying to bring people together in a world where there's very little common ground left. And I'm just going to end by saying we have an exceedingly patriotic sub-theme to our work, because our nation is in huge trouble. So, and actually I will end with just this. We're very connected to Davenport. We publish books for them. We're talking about Confederation talks with them. So our intent is truly to build an Americanized version of a futuristic city. And we picked a ghost town similar to what Davenport chose. So the location itself is ideal for this sort of very ambitious project. So I'm really glad Anna Luce told me about you all, and I'm gonna stay in touch, please. And if there's a newsletter, put me on it, because yeah, we need to start syncing up the locations on the planet where second-tier humans are not just experimenting, but actually getting traction and building the new world. And we're all in, brothers and sisters. We are all in at the Oracle Institute and Peace Pentagon. Gotta go, but so great to meet you all.
Be well.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Anna Luce, I know you also have to head out, and then we're going to go back into, just after Anna Luce, we'll pick it up with Ferial and Olivier.
Thank you so much. Yes, and I do have hungry kids, so that's why I have a limit to the time. So yes, from the professional hats, the many that I carry, I give a little bit of background on that, and then from there, what we're doing as well. So I'm the founder of Earthwise Center, and a co-founder of the Earthwise DAO, which we are now developing, that Alexander also is part of. And some others of you here. That's the beautiful thing also about a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, that we can really co-found that all together. I'm also part of the core team of HIFA, where we are creating the technologies for those DAOs, and serve as a systems architect and steward there, as well as for Seeds on the board of the Laszlo Institute. And we've with many of you here, part of the evolutionary leaders also, as Laura was saying, and so these are just some of the heads. But what we're doing at Earthwise really is applying the wisdom of living systems in the way that we develop and grow and evolve ourselves and our worlds. So that's really at the foundation. And I had with Marilyn the most wonderful conversation. It was already a few years ago, wasn't it, Marilyn, when we were talking about the educational transformation? Yes, Blueprint. One of my favorite conversations. I'll try to find the link of that YouTube and pop it in here. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, because it's so good. We talked really about what does it mean for a city as a living system. And I think that's really important, because as a systems scientist, this is where I intersect with Alexander as well. I'm in love with living systems because to me they are the sensory organs of the universe. And what's so amazing of living systems that they are able to access and embody and network the quantum potentials also of our universe in a way that develops the evolutionary capacities that make life possible and thrivable. So imagine using that architecture, those principles, then really also as living cities. And in order to support people with that, we've developed an Earthwise constitution for a planetary civilization on the basis of living systems. And that's, again, the starting point there is that every living system has a constitution. And that's not imposed. The constitution is really the deeper cosmic architecture of life itself, which is a relational architecture. It's an architecture of unity and interdependence and interrelatedness. So if we're starting that actually is a constitution already given, then how can we then help people to access that and work with it and make it really concrete, but also artistic and beautiful and wonderful as a new kind of social contract. So this is where the Earthwise Constitution is free, open source for everyone to work with. It's not a document that you just have to sign up and endorse. That's not its purpose. Its purpose is to inspire, which means that you are completely free to adapt it, to evolve it, to work with it further and create your own constitutions. And that's what's starting to happen now. So we, for example, have translated the Earthwise Constitution to a HIFA constitution, which is creating now a constitution for DAOs, for setting new standards based on living systems, what technology really needs to serve. The same thing with Seeds, the same thing with other companies who've been working with that. And then our latest kind of support tool system for humanity and also living systems is the Earthwise Pledges. We'll also put some links in that. And these are pledges also for planetary civilization based on the Constitution that can help us to create these kind of conversations with each other that are necessary to embark on the quest for both the personal and the collective and societal transformations. And so these 16 pledges are also freely available. They are part of the Article 7 of the Constitution, and we are applying that now in a gamifying way. So a very ambitious project that we are working on is the Earthwise Game for Civilizational Transformation. And for that we are, and Social Systems Lab, Tim, I see you here, also a key technical partner with us, as well as HIFA. Where we are really looking at if we were to using now the blockchain technologies, Web3 solutions, DeFi, GameFi solutions, which democratize governance and ownership as well, and decentralize that. then what kind of tools can this provide people then to create these living systems? So this is where we really want to be interweaving the new paradigm technologies, as well as the understanding and science of living systems, as well as indigenous wisdom principles, and art as well. So this is what we are doing now, to start playing the game in real life context, as well as to develop a game platform as an open world immersive action game that youth would also then love, with real life challenges and quests. And one of those quests, for example, challenges could be that you're getting an NFT biodiversity card, and you're opening that on your phone, and you're going, and that was also a beautiful idea that Alexander gave for an augmented reality. You go into your city, and as you are accessing your NFT biodiversity card, the challenge might be, see your city in an augmented way now. Imagine how a living city, a truly thriving city, would look like with that card. And then reach out to your closest network connections now. What actions can you then take in order to start the transformation of your city accordingly? So we were really looking forward to actually playing this game with all of you here, and also having your input. That's why we are doing this as a DAO, because it allows us to have that collective input. As part of that process, the city of Rotterdam in the Netherlands just have now asked me to help them to create a thrivable city. So this is where that's kind of now starting to happen in the Netherlands, and they asked me to help inspire them to envision from a future perspective, what is the soul of the city. So in Rotterdam, which is interesting because it's such a there's boats and trade, and when you look on there, you may not think of its soul, but we're actually going to be working with what's the soul and the spirit of Rotterdam, and what does it want to become, rather than being a place for humans. But the city itself has a collective consciousness. So we're going to be working with, what does it want to become? What is its future becoming? And how can we human together with its beautiful evolutionary development? Thank you.
If we're looking for red threads, I think you've woven a carpet here. There's so much going on, beautiful. But we will be, I'm sure, finding ways to connect with all of that. We've also shared, Marilyn and I have also put a couple of things there, the conversation that you referred to earlier, as well as a link to what Earthwise is doing, so people can find out more about that very, very rich platform as well. Ferial, we're on to you.
Thank you so much, Alexander. And yes, absolutely. So many things that Nilu shared that were so aligned. But yeah, so I'm going to just head straight in the interest of saving time. So firstly, I feel incredibly fortunate to be here with all of you today. And I hope that what I have been working on can contribute meaningfully to our process of this kind of augmenting and scaffolding of our work to kind of, I think for me, it's really looking for that leveraging points, right? Both so that we can see that kind of enhance the collective of what we do, but also our personal expressions. And so the organization I represent today is Ignite Life. Alexander always refers to that. So our little tagline is come alive, create the future. And I think that's it. The moment we come alive, that is an automatic thing that happens. And I think if we somehow can kind of put that into the consciousness of humans, of it's not about going to do where there's money, where there is prestige, where there's what makes you come alive, go do that. Because I think it was Marilyn that said this, and Marilyn, I had that same realization, and I teach about that now in SRG Journeys that we created, which is that you're not here randomly. You've absolutely are the best of the best, and the universe has actually emerged you out of your bloodline for this moment in time. And I think if we can truly get that, if we can understand we're this amazing expression, and this is really what Ignite Life is at the core about, and it's about providing that opportunities for synergistic engagement among evolutionary leaders, where we can explore ideas, perspectives, and modalities that can support this kind of evolutionary world we're beginning to embody, and then pushing the edge of collective thinking, knowing, and of course, evolution. So what are some of the fires we've been stoking so far? So there's three major aspects that we look at, and the first is co-creation, the second being empowering of change makers, and the third being helping humanity transform from the inside out. So co-create, we've been co-creating with 20 plus different projects, businesses, organizations that we think help or can help emerge this better future. So each of these co-creators offer unique solutions that we'd love to contribute into, or I'd love to contribute into the LC ecosystem. So in a way, I kind of spend more of my time being somewhat of an ambassador for, rather than even working a lot on my own things, right? So in a sense, either way, whether it is working on my own or whether it is working with these other co-creators, I feel very invested in that. And I hope that I can maybe share some of that today. So I'm going to start by sharing a little bit more about these 20 organized. Well, I'm not going to share 20, don't worry. Many of them are also represented here. There are co-founders in Living Cities Earth, so I'm not going to go there. I'm going to talk a lot more about the ones, maybe I'll just pick a few of them that are not necessarily represented here. So the first one I'd like to talk about is Tipping Point Festival. And so, yes, Olivier, I am waiting with bated breath to hear about your your festivals, because I think there might be this absolute red thread running there. So with some other partners like James Gian Wong and even Anna Luce had initially been involved with some of this, but the idea is to kind of create this kind of festival added space, right? What I shared, and the reason I shared that particular story was that I think it does. Festivals have this kind of way of bringing people together in an amazing way. So I think, and I think we can all kind of agree to that, right? We've all been there, we've all danced and sang and ate and so forth. And it brings people together from, there's kind of a unifying space where it brings people from different cultures, religions and things into that one space. And there they can get to know each other. Because very often we fear that which we do not know. And that breaks down that barrier for us to do that. And I've seen that happening, you know, in the flesh at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and then all the other festivals that connect into the Fringe Festival. So the Tipping Point Festival takes this concept of festival to a global scale, and it's about envisaging kind of this non-linear transition festival that weaves together what Alexander said, this tapestry of humanity. So it is an ambitious project, and it aims to tap into the latent human energy of citizens who are eager to contribute to meaningful and impactful change, but they may not necessarily know how to do that, right? They have that desire. That desire is in most of us. So by recognizing the power of these ordinary citizens and their roles, specifically as consumers, we can integrate, coordinate, and synthesize the efforts of billions, if we can imagine that, billions of people. Imagine festivals all around the world in these 10,000 cities, right? Being put together by the citizens of that city and championed, for example, by the mayors of those cities, those people that Marilyn we're talking about. And if we were able to then kind of use these billions of individuals to take on the corporate giants of the world, not through violence or through protests, but the Tipping Point Festival aims to mobilize 25% of the human population, leveraging social tipping point theory to drive this kind of rapid bottom-up whole system change. And this bottom-up action, when combined with traditional kind of top-down approaches, which we already have in place, can create this non-linear and disruptive force that can possibly accelerate the pace of change. So, this is just a concept right now, but the proof obviously will be in the pudding. We already know festivals work. So now what if we add this other aspect to it and we become a lot more intentional with it? What happens then? So next, I'd like to introduce something called the Transform app and game. So this is where it's so much aligned with Annalise, because we had been kind of putting together just the UX design for a game. It's kind of enabling individuals to connect with their communities. And this game goes along with the Tipping Point Festival. So it's kind of that thing that allows them to also collaborate outside of just the festival, to connect with their communities and environment while making this kind of positive change on the planet as well. So through the Transform app, saving the world becomes fun and also a rewarding experience. The app encourages users to develop sustainable habits that benefit both the planet as well as their own well-being. So it's that kind of like growing together, right? By gamifying sustainable living, the Transform app makes it easy for more kind of enjoyable opportunities to actually make that positive change, right? This app is also part of a bigger strategy that has been kind of conceived by one of my colleagues, James Guian Wong. It's called Stop, Reset, Go. And it's a rapid whole system change praxis. And we hope to have this is an aspect, the Tipping Point Festival, as well as the Transform app and game are part of the strategy, or one aspect of it. And then I'd like to talk to you about BAMA Maps. So I also operate as an ambassador for them. And BAMA Maps, the idea is that we'd actually create Transform app inside of BAMA Maps, because BAMA Maps was kind of designed in the blockchain technology and or with blockchain technology. And we've also looked obviously at Annalise and what she's doing. Annalise has shared with me, and we've looked at kind of seeing, oh, this is a very complementary game. So we're going to be looking at how can we kind of work together with them. We're also focusing on different aspects of the work, but the idea is obviously to bring it together. But that brings me to something called the IndieWeb. So the IndieWeb is a new software. It's kind of an ecosystem. And I would say what we would understand as an operating system. And it's designed by Juri Lejos, a doctor of philosophy and computer science, and also, again, James Guian Wong, who is involved with rapid whole system change. And they've used Web3 technology. So in essence, the IndieWeb facilitates the archiving of the evolution of an individual's consciousness whilst interacting in the online environment. In other words, it is capturing what we are, how we are interacting in there, and we become the architects of that as individuals. Nobody will ever own our data. It will be ours, and we would decide how we would actually share that and to whom we would share that. It basically reflects an individual's transformation, and due to the nature of entanglement of the collective development, it also in turn then can reflect for us how we are collectively and culturally developing. It gives us a pulse on what is happening, and how we're shaping the future, and why we are shaping it the way that we are. So I've been working closely with them for the past 3 years, and the idea is that we would integrate Transform app also into the IndieWeb as an example of what is possible. But as I mentioned, IndieWeb is an ecosystem, so it's not meant for one application. The IndieWeb, I think, enables this network to also have this opportunity of all these different applications we're perhaps already beginning to develop. They've designed it in such a way that it can seamlessly integrate into the IndieWeb. So I hope to at some point invite them to actually give us a demonstration, because they're getting to a place now where they're ready for a demonstration of this. And I think it could be quite an opportunity for LCE to leverage. And finally, we can kind of operate in a system that allows us to have the culture that we want to have. So lastly, I'd like to bring our attention to the context within which we are attempting to help these 10,000 cities to be environments where people, human well together, express themselves fully and meaningfully. And I think throughout every stage of their lives, because it changes as we grow. And then, of course, living in harmony with our ecosystem. So I don't think we can build a framework without deeply considering the context in which we are building this framework, this kind of VUCA Bani world of, volatility, unpredictability, complexity, and ambiguity. that we find ourselves in at the moment. And I've been working with this group called Universal Truth in Scotland, a community interest company. And they're piloting a racial anxiety model and also a racial healing framework. So alongside with other work, of course, here in LCE, I think it's important that we consider how we start implementing these strategies among ourselves. Because I think we should, there are things about, we've done a lot of work in our own individual consciousness, but the moment that we engage as a group, as a team, as a collective, there's a lot of things that will surface because we come from different parts of the world. We hold truth, different things, you know, we have different worldviews in essence, and the way that we approach the world. And so this model, in a sense, it's addressing particularly racial issues, but it can be adapted to address other polarizing issues that we're having to create inside of the context of, right? So I'm suggesting that perhaps this could be something that we could look at to use this model, but firstly implement it with ourselves, because I think this allows us to really see what is there, what is surfacing for us, because inevitably the moment we begin to start to work together, things start to surface. And hopefully in preempting that, we begin to put building blocks in place already that help us to manage that kind of fallout of differences between ourselves that could possibly happen, right? So with that, I'd just like to say thank you. And I want to pass the mic on to the next person. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ferial. I'll take it back. And Olivier, you are up next.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Ferial. Impressive. I will share notes also. I think that can be helpful. I see Marilyn doing a lot of efforts in capturing everything and all that conversation. So I try to put a few links and so I've been working with many networks over the last 15 years, as I mentioned earlier, the World Innovation Summit for Education, which really helped to start Global Education Futures with Pavel and many others, Global Education Leaders Partnership, Learning World Frontiers, and many others. So that's just to say that there are so many of these networks that are existing, and some of them are ecosystems, and some of them are. So just sharing a few there. But today, just speaking about the Learning Planet Institute in a few moments. It started as a research center on life sciences, but an interdisciplinary research center. It started in 2006 in Paris in a hospital, and very quickly brought very many young researchers and young people. And very soon we co-created with these youth some master program, PhD programs, and bachelor programs, interdisciplinary on life sciences, learning sciences, digital sciences. The cultural commons, the natural commons, the digital commons. How do we make sure that in everywhere we learn, we were very strong project-based focus, very much action also oriented and solutions oriented? How do we make sure that these three connect in a way that it better serves the future? So that's kind of initially a research center and very soon a university. We are an NGO, so we've got a unique status in France, because we have we are partners with plenty of universities, partners with research centers, and also with social entrepreneurs. So that's the beginning of the story. And Francois, the founder, is seen as a scientific social entrepreneur, which is a category which is of interest if we want to change the world. This was the very beginning. It's been growing and growing. Very strong support for Paris with Pavel and with Alexander. We're at the time being in the 7,000 square meter space, which has been given to us in a way by Paris for 55 years, so that we can grow the initiative. We do a lot of research on social and emotional learning, on collective intelligence, social emotional learning, and AI. So these are the kind of fields of real research and development. Develop some tools. How do we better connect all these initiatives around the world? How do we navigate the data, the projects, all these things? We don't know very much about ourselves. Just within LPI 5 years ago, we had 1,300 different projects being run by staff and students and things like this. So nobody knows about everything what's going on. We do innovate a lot, do a lot of things, but we don't learn from each other. So one of the things we really want to do is how do we better learn and share with each other, and then are able to do things together. So it's developing the whole approach of what are the tools, what are the approaches and way to mobilize collective intelligence and to collaborate. So these are some of the fields. It's been growing and growing, and the Learning Planet Institute in 2017 and 2018 was asked by the French government to write 3 different reports about what is a learning society, how do you implement a learning society, how can we take it to the next level very soon. So that's something we've done with thousands of interviews and the whole team. Based on this, François said, okay, this is not good enough. We're looking at the learning communities, at the learning cities with Paris, creating plenty of programs for youth, the Climate Academy and many other things. But we're doing it at the national level. It's not working too well at the national level. But we need also a planetary approach. And being based in Paris, he went to talk to Audrey Azoulay, the head of UNESCO, and said, let's create together an open alliance for the future of learning that will help equip young people and adults with the knowledge and skills that are needed to collectively address the transitions, digital environment, social transition, to make sure that what we learn is more about how do we learn collectively on challenges of today and tomorrow, and not learning from the past in the top-down way and things like this. So how do we transform all this? And we had this agreement. So we launched, that's when I came in. I know François since 2009, but I came in the Learning Planet Institute to create the Learning Planet Alliance. So it's with UNESCO and hundreds of organizations. And I'm going to be, I wrote down quite a few things, but in a way, we're trying to do a middle ground where we do projects with plenty of the organization, create online spaces and digital solutions for this organization to meet. We create events that people in the community can come together. We create on-the-ground program and research program, especially one that we're launching on the 29th of June. I mean, we're presenting about exploring local learning ecosystems in the global south, in some of the places which are the most adverse, north of Bangladesh that is being flooded, refugee camps in Rwanda, other places. And these are focused on thriving children and thriving communities. So how do we promote them, share them, learn from these, work on policy framework? Okay, so it's giving you many different ideas. I've shared a few links if you want to deep dive into this. Maybe to join Ferial. We also created the Learning Planet Festival under the motto, learning to take care of oneself, others, and the planet. And what is interesting, because I did a huge summit and things before, is this one is completely distributed. So last year we had 630 events, half of them in France, I must say. Okay, but some of them with 600 participants in Phoenix, or 1,000 in Delhi, or some in Minnesota, or 3,000 in Lyon. Okay, so different size of events. Overall, everybody could contribute, but we can't do this alone. So it's completely co-constructed with others. So we have a social entrepreneur there, a City of Dublin, or someone else, different kind of players and youth-led organization like Fridays for Future are saying, okay, I want to do something, Kids for SDGs across Asia. I'm going to do a global hackathon. And you had youth all over the world doing a hackathon on SDGs. So what is interesting, it is, okay, we try to host and offer a platform that brings together everyone, but then we do organize some sessions where everybody can meet, some highlights, some topics, but then it's up to other people to take it. And what is very interesting, and like in Lyon, when Lyon organizes 130 events on its territory, where, you know, it's a lifelong learning festival there, which is really physical and people are meeting, and it is the beginning of a learning community, learning territory approach. And in Lyon now they have an innovation fund for education that has been done with 6 cities, plus Lyon, plus the region, plus social entrepreneurs, plus private sectors. So that's the kind of dynamic, if it could grow, that we find a bit interesting. And I'm going to stop. But what we are trying to do now is, in fact, it's so much effort to organize the festival with a small team, that we will keep doing this around International Day of Education for a real celebration. But the platform is working very well. So we are starting now, and especially in September, to invite any community who wants to hold an event to at least publish it on the Learning Planet platform, so that people meet throughout the year. And it's very difficult to nurture and animate a global community. I mean, we tried so many different things and so many different partners are trying things. Make it alive is very difficult. At least we hope that if people come regularly and meet and organize their own event with their community, this is going to create some kind of links. So I stop there with a festival and event platform, but there are many other things that we're working on.
My goodness, the richness, Lev, I see you, but the richness that we have here isn't this amazing? I mean, we're listening and it's just, to map and to connect just what we've just now been hearing, you know, the all of this. It's within just mapping any one of the presentations that we're hearing is it's challenging. And to connect, right? Olivier, you want to mention?
No, one quick word, but because we've been discussing this, but it's true that I know more and more. I mean, there's a momentum. People see that the world has to change. So every day I hear of 5 new big networks being created by big organizations. Sometimes maybe there's 5 by UNICEF or 10 by UNICEF and 10 by UNESCO and 10 more. And none of them know each other. And all of them are networks, but maybe not ecosystems. So I think one of the challenges we need to share there is how do we make our relationship into something ecosystemic and alive? Because there are more and more efforts. I know hundreds of movements for youth, climate, education, but the change is not happening on the ground. So how do we make it more systemic and how do we make it more rooted? That's my
Let me Lev, just before I get to you, I want to mention 2 things here, and then we're going to turn to Gail will be up next, and I'll just share the flow here so people can get prepared. After Lev goes, then it'll be Gail, Tim, Chantal, Sonia, and then Lev again, and me. But we have Pavel who joined as well, so we'll make sure that he gets woven in. I did want to mention just 2 things, Lev, just before you go, before you take the mic, and that is it was Marilyn who put here the difference between the networks and the ecosystems. Yes, with so many of these things, like Olivier is saying, the effervescence of these different organizations bubbling up right now, it seems that one new one is born almost every day. Networks, not just individual initiatives, right? Now this is, and then it becomes almost a Tower of Babel. It's like, oh, they're all doing these things and they're all reinventing the wheel, which means there isn't the synergy. So it is actually the opposite of what we're looking to do. It's creating this collective intelligence. It becomes sort of a redundant Tower of Babel. So initiatives like we're going to hear also from Tim Olsen about what the Social Systems Lab is doing to map this out, and not just map, but make it a way that people can find each other's initiatives in complementary and powerful ways. So these kind of things, right? This is some of the platforms, for example, we'll hear from Tim. I don't want to go too far into this beforehand, but just stay tuned. But these are the things that help make the difference between a network, which is not necessarily alive. You can have an information network, you can have a computer network, etc., and an ecosystem which is alive and living and has to be fed and nourished, cared for, and loved. So how do we become ecosystem gardeners? This is the challenge, and Pavel is going to address that as well in when he presents. But let's turn to Lev and then to Gail, and then we'll flow through.
Thank you, Alexander. So I'll talk about Living Cities Earth. There has been a lot said before, so I'll focus on a specific aspect in terms of what are our goals and what capacities we bring to achieve them, and how we could interconnect with other projects, initiatives, organizations. And I wanted to speak after Olivier, because what he shared was also our experience. I remember 10 years ago, on a local scale in one particular city where I was born, we ran a festival and we united 300 events under one roof within a framework of 2 months. It was called Festival of Humanity or Human Festival, or something like this. So we realized that one thing is to have a collection of events or even projects, etc., and another one is to build this ecosystem which interconnects everybody in a really cohesive way. And this is what we're thinking about, of course. My sense is that so one of our goals is to identify, interconnect, and support 1 million change leaders in 10,000 cities, because working with cities in the past, we noticed that they change through the efforts of leaders, people who have energy, vision, capacity to change things at scale, whether they're city mayors or local entrepreneurs or non-for-profit organization leaders. And so within each city, our interest is to identify those leaders, supports them in bringing the integral perspective to local city development, which includes people, communities, organizations in the city overall, as well as larger systems. And when I think about how we can interconnect with what Ferial has shared and what Anna Lutz has shared and Olivier and every one of us, so definitely we all work with change makers one way or another. And I think that to create this cohesive ecosystem on a global scale, it's very important also to understand what's sort of the identity, the individual purpose of each of the initiatives and each organization. For example, if the Learning Planet is focused on creating models and frameworks of modern, let's call it education or development, then within the Living Cities Earth, we don't need to do the same, right? We can go to Olivier and his colleagues and say, guys, let's think how we can take your capacities, your networks, your frameworks, and weave it in together with our contacts, our network, etc. And the same goes for, we go to Tim and think, okay, how to bring your technological solution and your expertise, etc., together with our goals and objectives. So where I want to stop here to save time is that it's really important to understand what are our core competences, right? And then how we can bring them together in a mutually reinforcing way. For example, we're collecting now a database of city administrations in 10,000 cities. We're establishing our brand through communicating with them on a regular basis, offering them something valuable. For example, the Peace Initiative by the Empowerment Institute by David Gershon, we're promoting it through our network. When the Learning Planet Institute will have next sort of global event or program or project, which we can sort of co-create and distribute on a global scale through this specific channel, we have done this, information gathering. Other people don't need to do it. We can do it together, right? This is just a simple example. So this vertical integration of value creation, like they do in business organizations, right? We think about the value creation chain or value chain. This is the same we could do in our evolutionary sort of projects and, global initiatives. Let me stop here. So our interest is to share what we have, our capacities, with other like-minded projects and organizations. Also to connect through your networks to those local leaders, to find those who are interested in using the integral approach to the city development. This is what we have noticed in the past, connecting to a specific change leader in a city. Not all of them understand the integral approach, want to be the sort of local integral change leaders. But those who understand, those who resonate, they become a real force for good. They start to interconnect other people in the cities from very different industries, right? So we're not talking only about education or only about culture or only about infrastructure or only about technology. We are talking about all of them in a holistic way. So the cities are just the natural network which spans, the planet, and we use access to those city leaders, right, change leaders, to support them with our integral mindset and framework and tools to facilitate and catalyze positive changes on a local or regional scale. So working together with all of our organizations, I'm sure we can do a lot of good. Let me stop here. And Alexander, do I pass it to Gail or?
Well, yes, no, let me just double check here. So first of all, Olivier, just so you know, when Lev raised his hand because he wanted to speak after you spoke, because he saw directly the connection there very powerfully between what you're doing. Now, in our last session, we're going to make those connections more explicit, right? So just we're now we're more than halfway through this part where we're exploring what are the connections. Welcome, Daryl, as well. And goodbye, Daryl. Okay, you're going to be back on. There you are. All right. And I know Sonia is here as well, and Chantal and others. So the idea is, again, we're now exploring what are, okay, and Chantal has to be connecting from her phone. So, okay, when she'll be able to speak with us at the time comes for her to share. Okay, great. And so we're sharing now our professional engagements with this and what organizations we are working with, or projects or initiative we're working with that have to do with bringing people, nature, life into connection, and doing so in ways that bring us into an interbeing that is alive. And how does that connect with cities, really, in particular, where we live and where we are connected with maybe several cities, not just one, but okay. So this was the general framing. Pavel, you raised your hand quickly. Was that just, are you, because after this, we're going on to Gail and to others. Do you have something you want to make as a comment here, or shall we wait for you to, when your turn comes around? How does it work? You're okay? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead with Gail, and then we'll pick you up when we get to you. Pavel should be soon. So just so we know. So we got Gail, and then Tim. Then we'll take Chantal. Hopefully she's on the road, but we'll get her, and then let's do that for the moment. So Gail, Tim, and Chantal, then we'll move on to others. Yeah. And you're mutable again. Yes.
I'm just blown away with what I'm listening to. It's like, wow. I'm in my mid 80s, but I want to go back to where I was 21 and teaching in my second grade class. And what I learned that year, those years of teaching, was self-organizing systems are brilliant. And what they taught me about how they can self-organize and learn together and play together was extraordinary. And I just had kids. I didn't have Waldorf kids or Montessori kids. I just had kids, but they're brilliant. And we think we have to add structure and discipline and seriousness to all of this education. And I learned so much different. What I mainly learned, and it's taken me where I've gone, is the act of doing together, the act of designing and creating something together, not talking about it, not studying it, but actually learning it as a way of creating something, is what people would fall in love with each other. The people and kids who thought they didn't like each other or didn't have anything in common, when they were designing together, building with their hands, playing, a whole different culture would emerge. We just had kids, but kids started coming into our school who were slow learners, or who had been slow learners or fast learners. And I just said, I take kids, and parents would come in and say, I have a slow learner. I'm afraid he won't be able to keep up with you. And I'd say, leave us alone. We'll talk back to you in 6 weeks or so. And what would happen would be extraordinary. We expect too little of each other, over and over and over. We expect too little of each other. And so my work has always been to just take the ordinary. We're extraordinary when we're together, but I think all of us are ordinary when we're working as individuals. And we claim to be all these things, but to me, it's just ordinary people finding each other, creating something together, and being extraordinary in that making. So when I stopped teaching, I went to the Learning Exchange and created the Learning Exchange. And it brought CEOs, scientists, artists, kids, teachers, inner city, all these groups together. And we designed courses that were missing in the school districts and sold them back to the school districts. Now, we did that through experiential education. So when the CEO came in and said, I'm afraid my city we're all becoming suburbanites. What's happening to our city? I want to create an awareness of cities for young kids so that when my son grows up, he'll want to be in a city. And I said, okay, I want you, not your representative, and your money, because you have the money and I don't want a representative. We never lost a funder because we always demanded direct. So here was a CEO, kids, inner city teachers, parents, scientists, artists working together, sleeping on the top of an inner city building at night, rolling down the city in wheelchairs to find out why cities didn't support people. We were doing these things together, and people were finding out that they loved each other, and they loved playing together, and they loved working together. And that took me with my husband into M.G. Taylor Corporation, which again was all about group genius of coming together and solving complex problems, again through experiential, inventions. Design a system with, in an organization, design a system that does these things and drops a ball 5 feet and then rings a bell and tells a timer, or all of these different things. Playing together, working together, solving a problem is the only way I think we can create this civilization we're looking to, this new creation. So finding the ways, not just talk together and have meetings together, but actually get people building things, making models of the city that they want to have, how the 15-minute cities work, how get them designing. We're doing that a little bit with Kansas City. We're finding ways to cover our freeways with loops, parks and prairies and things like this. And again, it's getting involved. And the other night I was there and I was playing with toothpicks and I was playing with, different things. And we were sitting around tables doing this. So right now I'm just kind of listening and I'm playing and I'm thinking, Lev, what you said. I've done a lot of thinking with Stuart Kauffman on self-organizing systems. And one of the things that Kauffman talks about is too much togethering creates gridlock. Too little creates entropy. So what is that mix? And if all these new organizations, are we all doing the same thing? Let's be careful. And how are we playing together? Playing with our hands, playing with our ideas, building, talking, sharing. That's so important that we don't just create another huge bang that blows itself out because we're talking and not doing and not understanding and not meeting these other groups and people in the process of making something, in the process of creating something. I just think that's really, really important. Basically, Lev, what I heard you talking about is creating a scaffolding where these kinds of ideas can come together. We can't build from where we are. We have to create that scaffolding and support system that helps us all reach higher. So anyway, I can name a number of groups that I've played with and dropped out of. I'm really excited about Living Cities. I'm really excited about Earthwise. I hope that they, and of course Sign Networks, but I hope they distinguish themselves enough to not be too duplicative and to keep the growth, keep growing that diversity and that meaningful interaction. I took a course with Jean Houston, and she called me the people whisperer. And I think that's what I do better than anything, is kind of bring groups together. So just one last thing. Right now, I live in downtown Kansas City, and 2 blocks from me is the Y. And it's a new Y, a newly refurbished Y from an old building. And I am seeing extraordinary numbers of people of all ages, all disciplines, including homeless, come and find place and activities and togethering. And I think that let's not underestimate what these organizations do. They're willing, they're hungry. They just don't know where opportunity lies. So it's not difficult to get into conversations with them about what they want for their city and what meaning has, and to get them involved. It's just, you have to go to the places to find them. And I'm just really, really excited about this quote new home I found 2 blocks from me. That's giving me access to new friends that I maybe never would have met, and learning from them and them learning from me. So anyway, lots of things to think about. And again, it's that scaffolding. You know, how do you create that scaffolding in places like the Y, out into the broader community, out into where mayors can hear them, and where mayors pay attention to, well, these people, yeah, they have things, they have stories to tell, they have meaning to bring, they have purpose, or they're looking for purpose. How can we help? That's me.
Thank you, Gail. It's a wonderful you. And it's us, it is you, but it's the interbeing, and that's what we're exploring. Very cool. Very nice. Thank you. And I'm also just aware of our time, because we really also want to be able to move this into the co-creative weaving components. This is kind of the scaffolding for our co-creative weaving, where we're now seeing, okay, where let's listen to each other's stories here of what our organizations, our initiatives, our professional engagements are doing. And then we take that in our last session, our last round, to weave together, see what is the action network that could emerge, or that is emerging here in its strongest potential. How can we platform that? Well, Tim is going to tell us a little bit about those sort of things. On to you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Do I have like 3 minutes, or how much time do we have?
It's, you know, self-regulate, but
self-regulate.
Take the time that you need to deliver. I'm not going to cut you off, but
okay, cool. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna rush a bit, but yeah, it's great to be here. I'm just skipping. Got a big family festival going on every year, so I'm taking an hour away. But I thought it was really important to meet you all and speak to our joint mission, and hopefully I'll meet many of you next week in Zurich. Yes, so I'm here representing Social Systems Lab, also Social Systems Foundation, which Alexander is a part of. And basically what we do is we frame ourselves as building tools for transformation. So what are the tools we need to take us to the next step? So become self-organizing, a self-organizing species, or the superorganism we like to speak about. So I wanted to speak just very briefly about the work we do as it relates to the Living Cities Earth project or network. And I think that maybe the most important thing we're working on at this point is something we call Circles. So the platform is called Circles. It's an open source open source platform, and the first version we're putting out into the world is called Kodu, as in doing things together. Basically, it's a platform that I sometimes think of it as Tinder for change makers. So the idea is that you create a profile, you add, these are my skills, these are my interests, this is what I can bring to the table. And then you see if you match with anyone who needs your skills, a project that aligns with your values, or someone who needs whatever you can bring. And then you decide if I want to connect with it. So it's a platform to connect. But what's I think especially interesting is that we're building it on a geolocation base. So I'll drop some mock-ups in a bit into the chat, but basically it's a geolocation based matchmaking platform in a sense. And the idea is that you create your profile, you use it to find other matchmakers, not only geographically where they are, but also like based on what talents they have, what interests they have. So it's to connect with others and find ways to deepen the connections by running projects together. The idea is that if wherever I live in the world, I should be able to find, okay, I'm free 5 hours on Sunday, I'd like to do something meaningful, what's out there? I mean, and you can scour Facebook and maybe find something, but on the platform we're proposing is one much more focused on actually going and doing good. We've also building in something we call the altruistic wallet. So it's a way to fund various projects out there, to crowdfund, or you can see it as like a micro crowdfunding or crowdsourcing platform. And to this, we're also adding like the ability to share resources. So like maybe I have a vehicle and a driver's license, and I'm available on Sundays between 3 and 5. So anybody who needs a vehicle and a driver at this point in time can call on me. And if I feel that what you're doing is valuable to me, or is in line with my values, then yeah, I'll come and drive your things. Any way you want to do it. I mean, it's organic. It's up to the members how it's used. So obviously there's something quite interesting here, being able to fund things, to share resources, to make connections. This is the foundation of identity, and that's, I think, where we're going with this, is to create a system of identity where, like in a village, everybody knows everyone in the village. In a city, you have no way, and especially not in the global village, there's no way to know who's who. So here you can kind of create a presence and a track record of what you've done for your community. And if I do something for my community in Stockholm, it's likely that I will also do something for a community in Buenos Aires if I move there. So I can sort of take my reputation where I go because it's vetted by communities. I think this could be really interesting as we move on, because we can start, I think Olivier spoke about the need for sharing best practices, or just knowing what learning from each other. So we could now start saying, okay, we worked with homelessness and drug abuse in this way and found it quite successful. And then you can sort of find other cities around the map that have addressed the problem and had been been a bit more successful than you have been so far. So we can start finding much more effectively finding better solutions to the challenges that cities face. And obviously from here we can also imagine as people engage more with each other through this platform, also becomes natural to engage more politically. So we can start writing citizen proposals. You can have a much more of a lively debate and a lively engagement from citizens. We can also have citizens' budgets and these things discussion and discussing these things. And I think it's important that you have like a social context around this, because otherwise just an app is just an app, and nobody's probably going to use an app, once every month or once a year to sort of vote on something, because it doesn't feel relevant. But if it's now integrated with your civic duties, then I think this could be a really powerful tool. And I think that as we move into the future with AI, with robotics, with all these things, it means that, probably going to have to find some basic income or some sort of solution to keep ourselves going. Well, how do cities live in that? Well, I'd say that humans are really good at helping each other. So we really want to build a platform that once we've freed up time, now make it possible for us to help each other, use that time to make each other's lives better and our own lives better. This is why I think this is a really interesting proposal. So yeah, and over time, you can also imagine how you can start mapping communities and see, well, this community they've got a lot of time, but they don't have a lot of other resources. And this community has a lot of resources, but not a lot of time. Well, can we find a matchmaking between them? I see that a lot in Cape Town, with very, very rich communities next to very, very poor communities. And you can see, well, how could you help? How could the wealthy community help the poor community to create much more stability and make it much less likely that the poor community is going to break free and come and steal all the stuff from the rich community, which is just nature's way of reallocating resources if we don't do it ourselves in a much more gentle way. So these are some ideas with what we're working on the Kodu network, and we'll have it up and running fairly soon. But I'll just drop some mock-ups for you guys to have a look at in the chat. I think that's all I need to share at this point. Thank you very much.
Tim, thank you. Thank you so much, Tim. And Pavel is going to go next. But before, just wanted to comment, it'll be very good that you share some of the mock-ups. I think it's nice, for example, Daryl mentions here that it sounds like a powerful concept. What I love about it is that it's really so much more than just a concept. It is a powerful concept, I agree, Daryl, but it is also a scaffolding, truly. A real, not just an idea, but something that is useful in this idea or in a way that is, like Google Maps. You can use it just to map things out, but you can also use it to navigate from one place to another. That's the utility of this sort of thing. It's a scaffolding that helps us, or like Waze, that helps us find each other and find who's doing what projects And then how can we connect that in a way that's truly visual? Now, you can see some of the mock-ups that Tim is putting into the chat there. And so that's where you get to see how this can be used as a kind of matchmaking service, a Tinder. People can find each other. But again, it's not just social dating. This is vocational dating service. And the vocation is not just whatever job we have, but it's about those initiatives that are making a better world, that making us thrive better together. So with that, I'm going to, you can explore some of these mock-ups that Tim is sharing here, but let's go ahead and take ourselves over to Pavel and what he gets to share with us. Thank you so much, Pavel. Oh, can I also mention who's next? Just so you get ready. Sonia, I know you're back and forth, so hopefully, Sonia, you can go after Pavel. Great. And then Daryl. All right.
Thank you, colleagues. Pleasure to be here and seeing many familiar faces and some faces of people I will be very glad to know in the future. And in terms of, I think, the calling that all of us have that brought us into this session and other sessions this week and in general to Living Cities movement, I think all of us are looking for this way of instigating positive change in the world. So I'm doing this specifically in a number of organizations. My primary organization is Global Education Future, that tries to help transform education as a vehicle of societal evolution. That's like, if we could say, what is our mission? This is our mission. How can we transform education from the system that is currently restricting human potential in many ways? It also creates opportunities for people, but it also destroys that human potential. How can we, because of the industrial origins of that system, that it required obeying people and so on, how can we turn these systems into something that really empowers everyone for creating better future? And in that capacity, we are also working on a number of very interesting projects with Alexander, Olivier, and some others that are hopefully I'll bring next week to Living Cities Earth gathering in Zurich. One of them is University for the Planet, which is exactly about how can we mobilize all these communities to work with each other for impact, learning together, and catalyzing positive local change and global change. And indeed, one thing that really strongly resonated with me is this very observable fact of the growing Tower of Babel, in which I think we are partially confined by our cognitive abilities, by our, let's say, predispositions to work with only limited number of people. The famous Dunbar number still is there. Like we prefer to work with maximum number of 100, 150 people that we know best, and that sort of forms our circle of collaborators. And going beyond that is very, very rare. And so that begins to create this kind of Tower of Babel dynamics where initiatives like tower upon initiatives kind of disconnected from each other, trying to solve the same problem, sometimes in competition, very often in competition with each other. How can we move from that into coherent ecosystems? How can we help integrate networks into coherent ecosystems? Is a big, big question. And for us, this is also a question of creating learning dynamics within those ecosystems. So how can we make sure that every ecosystemic kind of relationship, and cities are by nature ecosystemic because they have diversity of agents, they have hierarchy plays important role, but if we think about the city is more like a forest. There's a very diverse species interacting with each other in the same place, sometimes collaborating, sometimes competing. So if we think about cities, they are bound to thrive in ecosystemic ways of organizing. So how can we make sure that ecosystems are evolving in cities One of the things I offered to Lev and to Living Cities is during the marathon of the Happy Cities is to actually have that as discussion. How can we use the ecosystemic approach, particularly learning ecosystems for the creation of happy cities? So working with this ecosystemic approach requires a totally different way of a leadership that I think does not exist yet in full capacity. Some people really embody it, but it's a very rare faculty at the moment. And one of the things that we really need is seeing more of these ecosystemic leaders. The two archetypes we use in our work are weaver and gardener. So weaver is the person who actually makes the connection between existing initiatives, existing opportunities, whereas the gardener is someone who intentionally cultivates, intentionally grows new opportunities, makes things that are not there, or sometimes maybe prunes the ones that are out there because some, let's say, balance is required in ecosystem, and overgrowing of a tree may destroy opportunities for other species. And so making sure that it's in balance is really essential. That's the role of ecosystem gardener. So one of the things we can consider, colleagues, is actually making programs that help these ecosystemic leaders in cities learn how to weave and how to garden more intentionally, to make sure these learning ecosystems, cultural ecosystems, innovation ecosystems grow and flourish. And one of the other things that I have founded a few years ago is called Weaving Lab. And this is actually a community of practice where some of these things are being discovered and spread. And I think this is one of the groups that could also be part of Living Cities initiative, because I think it's the risk that if we don't cultivate this type of leadership, that just having many whatever leaders, change makers, and so on is not enough. We need the connecting tissue. The other thing that I want us to be aware of is making sure we break out of our bubbles. One of the things we constantly recognize is we are in echo chambers, and even trying to be these, connecting tissue people, we are still talking to the like-minded people. Like in this group, most of the people in this group, we know each other. We don't have types in this room that are very, very different from us. Like people may be holding fundamentalist perspective, nationalist perspective, and so on, maybe are not part of the group today. But they are very important for their communities very often. They are holding important, dynamics, and they see our work as a risk. They see us as enemies very often, not because we are enemies, but because this is the perspective that is currently out there. And the question that I hold for us is, how can we breach the gap and enter into this conversation, enter into conversation with people that are excluded from conversation? Maybe I took a very, let's say, polarizing examples right now, but Olivier just brought the topic of young people. There are so many voices that are not heard. There are so many voices that are underrepresented. Making sure we co-create with people that are very important to actual ecosystems but underrepresented is extremely important. And that also brings me to the point that that Gail has mentioned about the balance between, let's say, diversity and coherence, which is actually the key dilemma of ecosystems, because ecosystems are holding that paradox. They are aligned in terms of making the thriving space, living ecosystems are actually about making forests alive. Everyone thrives in the forest. Maybe a specific squirrel would die, hunted by a badger, I don't know, or a fox, but the whole forest community thrives because everyone is this supporting relationships are the most essential ones. But that is only possible if we have the balance between diversity and coherence, which is what some people call the window of vitality. There's a Robert Ulanovich research about it, which is very interesting. And actually maintaining that window of vitality is the key to create thrivable and happy localities. And learning how to do it, how to do this right mix where diversity is sufficient but not destructive, is, I think, the key to us. And maybe last thing that I want to mention is that all of this can be done if we are focusing on empowering for the future. Because Tim, you mentioned that that we all sort of begin to prepare for these massive shifts related to, for example, AI proliferating our workplaces and so on. So what does it mean? I'm running currently a big research with Boston Consulting Group where we try to map what will be those large areas of human occupations in decades to come. Like, what is the new working philosophy that is emerging? All of this, I sense, is extremely important. There is very little conversation about it, what people are going to do in the world where a lot of jobs are going to be taken by automation. So we see that where the convergence is about some elements. It's about regeneration of our, like, making us planet friendly, care, and fun. So perhaps, and knowledge creation. So these areas, like, there's more, let's say, more details that I'm not disclosing right now, but making sure that it's a people co-created future where we all are empowered to be future makers. I think that's the role of this learning ecosystem for happy cities that we need to co-create with each other. And that's our purpose. And that's our need to bring many more voices that are missing in this conversation. And this is what I sense my projects will be happy to offer to everyone else, is to be one of those vehicles for this to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pavel. Absolutely. Wonderful. So I'm quite aware of our time now. So I'm going to ask us to move. I don't want to cut anyone off, but I also do know that the richness is going to come when we weave. So let's share with us the essence of your projects that connect to thrivability, to thrivable cities, and to bringing people alive. And then we can see how we can weave your projects with the others that we've been talking about here. But let's look at the essence of these things. Sonia, what can you share with us?
Yes, hi again to everyone. Yes, I'm Sonia, and I'm in charge of a content strategy of a new platform, Teal. Unfortunately, my great partner, Ivan Voropayev, who is a general producer of this project and just run a new house of Integral Development Fund placed in Warsaw. Alongside, he runs the new platform, Teal platform, which I'm talking about today. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us, but I hope that I can tell you something about it without him. And I'm going to share some slides with you today, if you don't mind. Thank you for making me co-host. So just a second. Yes, here we are. All of you see my slides at the moment, yes, I suppose?
Yes, we do.
Yes, you do. So let's start with the thing that I've been listening 2 days already, this conference, and with much more I'm thinking about our platform. I'm getting more confident why our platform is so needed. And then one point, the first point is that we are going to make a space for solving communication crisis, the crisis where people with a different point of view, with different perspectives, like can't or don't see possibility to talk with each other. And I hope that our project will reduce this polarizing of these like points and make this dialogue happen. So that is why we took 3 lenses, 3 perspectives, how we are going to talk with you through our different formats, which I'm talking a little bit later, but it's a 3 ways, empirically, like with a scientist. The second one is a creatively, like intuitive. We are going to talk with artists, with psychologists. And the third one is a transcendentally, and that's how I see this, like the only one way to make this dialogue space happen. Oh, I'm trying to, okay. So yes, I mentioned this mission, and when we was just, I wanted to say that we are just in 1 month before our official launch. So today for me is the first time when I publicly talking about our project, and I'm a little bit nervous, sorry. But when we started to like conceptualize our project, we made some like custom development research, and we realized that our potential users are so overwhelmed by the huge of content. So we make this platform to make a trusty guide. That is why we make after as I board of experts we are really trust, and this board will consist of scientists, artists, curators, or integral professionals who will help us with choose topics, choose speakers, and choose like angle for which through this we are going to talk about. So what we are discussing here, it's different topics which you can just reading on my slides, and it doesn't mean that it's only these topics which are going to explore. We are so open for dialogue and finding new topics, but these are, from our perspective, is much more important today, like communication crisis, climate change and ecology, evolution, which I'm just going to tell you something, fundamentals of integral theory, of course, and etc. Like main formats, I didn't mention that it's an edutainment platform. What does it mean? Like we are going to not be boring for you. Somebody just mentioned today that we should be not so serious, which I'm so agree with you. So that is why we are going to make our content through serious webinars, lectures, discussions, but at the same time, we are going to make some online concept, online exhibitions or public conversations with our authors. We hope that it will be a platform where like diverse of formats and diversity of voices will land. Yes, so as I just mentioned, we're going to start in 1 month, and our MVP, like minimal value project, will include a first block where we are going to unveil the definition of evolution. So we invite three speakers with our 3 lenses, yes, like empirical scientific perspective. The second one will be with integral theory perspective, and I hope that we will make an agreement with Marilyn Hamilton, which we already invited to be to make this lecture. And the last one will be with a spiritual and transcendent perspectives. Like it's what I want to say to you. I think that this platform maybe is that opportunity to make this knowledge more accessible, and maybe I very like the idea which Lev mentioned yesterday about leadership, that leadership is about empower leader in each other. So I hope that this platform will help you, will help all of us to make this leadership, this idea of leadership in each other more tangible. Like we are so we are so open to collaborate with you, with all of you. It's like huge opportunity how you could collaborate with us, but I pointed here in my slides just a few options. First one, you can conducting online seminars or workshops here. You can, we are going to start some media materials, so it's possible to make some articles, some texts on our platform. we are going to make some public discussion. So maybe I will come to you and inviting you to be our speaker for some public conversation. And a lot of different ways how we could collaborate. This is our link to our platform. Now you can, I can also just stop sharing and just type our link to the chat. Just a second. Oh, thank you, Marilyn. Thank you very much. There you can leave your email. And I hope that in 1 month, we will write you a letter with a very nice news that we already ready to start. And for me, it's great pleasure that especially you, this audience who will be our first followers. I hope that in a few weeks, we're gonna start our social media channels, of course. Also, I'm here and leaving my personal contact. Don't hesitate to contact me and discuss any, Sophia Elterman, yep. Any type of collaboration which you already seen in this project, or maybe you will come to some ideas later. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Daryl. We're going to move very quickly on to you because of time. So again, let's move ahead and go ahead, Daryl. All yours.
I'll be brief and get back a lot of time, I guess, for us. I'm appreciative and very thankful to have been receiving such good information. But so my work centers on something Marilyn's very familiar with, the Center for Human Emergence. I'm very involved with Sparta Dynamics Integral, and specifically working right now with a group in Brazil and hoping to connect some of the dots in Accra, Ghana. And so I'm the word that comes to mind for me, because I've gotten so much from the last 4 folks, starting with Gail, Tim, Pavel, and so I'm appreciative of all of that. But basically, my thought is curating for concrete results. So I think the abstraction and the wonderful things that everybody's talking about, how they connect the dots and do the mesh work and all of those things, the way I make that manifest come to life is through the efforts of working with the Sparta Dynamics Integral community, which I believe has solid synergies, symbiotic relations to Living Cities Earth. And so that's where my focus is right now, on concreteness, and particularly focusing, I'll be going to Brazil in a few months and hoping to coordinate with the folks in Ghana as well. And I think those are the perspectives someone mentioned earlier about bringing some other folks involved. And I know the effort's been growing and growing. So I'm just thankful to be here and appreciate the wonderful things I've heard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daryl. Fantastic, and thank you for the weaving. So now we are, and again, we are going to continue the weaving. Remember, this is not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end. We're hoping this is the end of the beginning. So, so let's move ahead right now. Okay, we're going to get to healing. Thank you. I'll be bringing you in just a bit, but we have now 3 more. I think we have Kim, and then Chantal, if she's back, and then we'll take you back from the healing for rising. So let's move it in that order. Go ahead, Kim.
Well, hi. So I just got back from the Ukrainian Drop-In Conversation Club, and I guess I just want to share is something, Alexander, you're familiar with this, and probably everyone here is, being in a dialogue space in one place and going somewhere else, and the same conversation just keeps happening. So I was quite surprised when what came up during our conversation this morning when someone introduced integral spiral dynamics, which is not a normal topic, in our group. But nothing is a normal topic. Anyway, and I was just thinking about that, wondering, I'll probably just share that when I dropped in here. And it was right when Pavel was saying the words integral spiral dynamics. So I figure it's not, I just thought that's nice to share. I'm kind of engaged right now in regenerative economics, like studying that a bit, and working with someone on meaningful, actionable outcomes, which I spend a lot of time like in conversation, but in terms of listening to you and the being and the doing, I'm hoping to do that and maybe here with you. I'm engaged in a lot of different things. I don't quite know how it fits in, but I appreciate being able to learn and to listen. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Kim. And so now we are moving, I think Healing, let's take you next, Healing for Rising. I'm not, because I don't know your name, so I'm going to be sorry, that's what you have written up there. And then we'll see if Chantal is back, and we'll end up with Chantal. And I'll say one word or two at the end, and then we'll see if we have a moment still for the interweaving. Lev, you may need to take that because the building closes here at the top of the hour, and I will need to be out before then. So, Healing, all yours.
Hi, I'm Kara Stonehouse. I'm part of the Hague Center for Global Governance, Innovation and Emergence. And I just wanted to share about 3 projects very briefly. One is the Hollow Movement. I suppose you may have already been talking about it a little bit, but the evolutionary leaders working together to say, how do we up-level everything? So it's a nice connection with Living Cities Earth. And then the second is the Peace on Earth game. So through World Unity Week and connected with the Hollow Movement, David Gershan is the one who made the peace run go all across the world in the 80s. And now we're saying, how do we do that local scaling? So they have this Peace on Earth game that they want people to play in their local place. And it takes you through these conversations and questions and actions that you do with your local people, so similar to in your local place. And so it's this seed of transformation for peace on Earth. So it's activities like, find someone who's different from you and engage with them. And then at the end, it's like create some kind of project together that makes your community better. And so they just see how that really uplifts the citizens in that sort of emergent process. And then I'm connecting that, my core thing that I'm really I'm the core visionary on is the Spirit of Canada Dialogues project. And so it's taking that with a Canada focus on all this stuff that we're doing. So I did collective impact in the past in Ottawa for carbon reductions, but now we're taking a bit more of a spiritual twist on that same kind of collective impact process and saying, how do we really engage people to get beyond division? And so our mission in the next 99 days is to really create our proposal, pull it all together. So I'm excited to hear from everybody, like, what are all these keys? Like, I was inspired by Gail saying, well, you got to really get to building something, And so our big idea right now is dancing. So like a sort of future dance thing that we would do in many places that gets people like moving together and relating that way. And then leads to dialogue and then leads to co-creative actions and that sort of thing. So I'd like to keep weaving with that with anybody. So thank you.
And of course you're Kara. I'm sorry, the small screens, I didn't quite get that. So yeah, yes, hi. But Healing for Rising. Okay, so anyway, fantastic. And I just got information that the building is going to close a little later today, so I'll be able to stay on a little bit, but we don't want to use your time either. So we're still going to be moving then to wrapping up. I'm wondering whether or not Chantal will be able to, this is beautiful because she is also working on the Spirit of Canada kind of things. So there's already a connection right there. If you're not connected with Chantal, maybe this is a point where that's the kind of thing that could emerge. Chantal, are you available? Are you back?
I am. And I'm actually just about to pull into my driveway. So that's my blinker. Sorry about that.
You want me to give you a moment, Chantal, to actually arrive and get home?
Just like 2 more. Yeah, just like 30 seconds.
So let me give you that. And in the meantime, what I will do here is there's only one more person after Chantal, and I will go with that person now. That person is me. So let me just share briefly so that we can also get get Chantal back in. I think what I would like to share mainly is the difference between change makers and game changers. And I think this is something that we can focus on here, because there is a connection among many, many people who are change makers here. And that's wonderful. But I think in the process, what we can do is actually be game changers. But the game changing happens by doing it together. So each of us has change making initiatives in our local cities, communities, places. And those are fantastic. Our game changing offers, our change making offers, sorry. But to actually change the game. And these are the kind of things that Kim, you were mentioning as well, where we're looking at a different economics. We're looking at a different way of humaning together. And the only way we do that is by actually being that. We're not going to do it by saying, okay, here's a model. Everybody go ahead and do this and let's try to act in these ways. No, we have to be the change we want to see in the world, be the systems, be the cities we want to see in the world. And by being that and bringing them into life, into being, then I think that we can be more powerfully the agents of that shift. The organization perhaps that I can mention that I'm doing this most powerfully through is called the Laszlo Institute of New Paradigm Research. And the kind of research that we're doing is immersive, experiential, participatory action research. So it's not classical, let's be behind our desk research, theoretical, but it's about how do we do this in living cases? And we are the living case, right here. And it's not just, of course, the people here or the people just meeting in Switzerland. It's all those in our networks of networks that are connected, making those networks, as Marilyn said, into ecosystems, right? This is the Living Cities Earth project. This is not just a project, it's the vision, it's the mission. It's the ability to do this transformation into this thriving, living ecosystem. And we are the gardeners of that. So again, that for me is the game-changing offer. And to keep that in mind and to see how the small change agency that we're doing as, the change makers in our small level, it's not even small because each of us has huge initiatives that we're doing, but we actually can shift the needle, move the needle of human presence on Earth, create a different type of eco-civilization when we start to engage with each other in this way. These are the tipping point initiatives. This is what we're doing here together. So very cool. I'm going to drop in a link for the Laszlo Institute here as well. And in this time that we've been waiting here, we have managed to get Chantal back. You see how that worked? I'm passing it over to you, Chantal.
Thank you, Alexander. It was perfect timing. So, and in respect of the time, the essence of what I do is, I was trying to think of how to sum it up really succinctly, but it's facilitating a felt awareness and then conscious action to nourish the flow of life through self, community, and the web of life. So it's, I'm a meditation artist, so I have a practice where I facilitate sessions with people, and then also I've created place-based installations on the land where I live so that people can listen to guided meditations that connect them to the web of life, so that to connect them to the space that they're walking through, like trails. And then I'm also engaged with a lot of nature-based restoration projects, community-led volunteer initiatives. And I'm a newly elected municipal councillor in the town where I live. And so through that, really getting to learn how change happens within the system. And if I can recommend for all of us to look at creating policy documents that can be shared with our local councillors and mayors that can easily be adapted. So there's not a lot of time for within the structures for some of these ideas for us as a politician to come up with them ourselves. And if it could be easy to adopt policy actions or documents with suggestions on where funding could come from, I think that would be really helpful in speeding up the process. And I'm also engaged with the Convention on Biodiversity and enabling it internationally, nationally, and locally. So it's ecosystems, internal and external. Thank you.
Awesome, Chantal. Marilyn just popped off before I was able to call on her. Because she's like 4 minutes ahead of when she needs to be elsewhere. This is what we're going to do. We're going to wrap up here, hopefully in the next 4 minutes or so. And I'm going to suggest the following. And Lev, yes, you can go first. And maybe you want to say something else. But here's what I'd like to do in terms of this wrap up. If we were in person, we would be standing in a circle and we would have a ball of yarn. And we would say, here, this ball of yarn, my stuff that I'm doing, I feel is really connected to what Fariel was saying. So I'm going to toss it over to her. She grabs it. And then she's going to say, yeah, that's cool. I see that. And I feel it's connected to this. And she passes it. So say maybe your offer or your request, what you feel you want from this group, or what you feel you can bring to this group. What connection, in other words, what connections do you feel? And Lev is having visible and invisible yarn that he's sharing with us, fading in and out. So when you speak, you then say, I want to toss it to this person. They're the next person to speak. But let's try to weave our connection. Say, how's what you're saying doing? What connection did you see? And toss it to them, even if they're just an image. Hopefully they'll be behind that. Lev, we start with you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Everybody who is here, who will be watching later on. I was always on the right side. I have my second computer, so I was writing some notes in our. If you can see it, I don't know. No. Anyway, so in our Miro board. It's pretty filled up, so we have definitely created lots of content, and we'll be analyzing and structuring it and sharing with everyone, of course. But to finish, maybe in 1 minute, there are many connections, but I'll focus on one, and I will pass this ball on to Olivier later on. Again, there are connections with everyone who has spoken today, but I'll focus on one just to save time. And what I propose a specific step when I am in Europe and we have the co-founders camp in just a week. And I know that Olivier is not coming to the co-founders camp because he had prior engagements. So I would still love to meet maybe in Paris. And the reason is things which I have learned today, despite that we spoke in the past, but the things I learned today, I see so many very specific ways to synergize and to connect our different resources and capacities. So I feel it requires a more personal connection. So that's my take away from today. And of course, I'll be in touch with everyone on different other ways to collaborate effectively in the year and years to come. Thank you. I pass it on to Olivier.
Thank you, Lev. I'm capturing and hops this, but so I think we have to go very quickly. I would love to be with you. I had a great conversation with you. I just spent 2 days with Alexander and with Pavel, so we are weaving a lot of possible, very concrete partnerships. So I think that we'll share this with you, and we'll have time to catch up afterwards. There's plenty of connections for me and many other people we've been talking with. I'm just sharing a message. The next thing I'm doing just now that I would like to share is we're about to publish on the 29th of June, and I put some research on 11 learning ecosystems in adverse circumstances in Ghana, in Rwanda, in South Africa, Peru, Colombia, Brazil, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and India. Very different, sometimes big cities, sometimes very remote rural areas where people are focusing on thriving. So the report will be downloadable on the 29th of June. So that's the kind of invitation I'm sharing with Darren, I'm sharing with many others. And maybe I pass the the ball to Tim. I didn't announce it in advance because we had other connections on the platforms.
Yes, thank you so much. It was really interesting meeting you all. I've got lots of people coming up and visiting me now because of family, so I have to, sorry for the noise in the background. Basically, we are super keen to work with anyone who thinks the software we're building, which is obviously open source, is keen to help us, if you have use cases to work with us. That would be fantastic. So just reach out to me or through Alexander, has all my details, and Olivia will chat soon enough. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys.
Pass it, someone.
You pass the ball to whom?
All right. Who
Weaving.
hasn't? Darrell, have you spoken?
But Tim, you're trying to weave. So make the connection, not just with who hasn't spoken. Who do you feel that there's a weaving connection with in terms of your project?
Okay. Well, then then I'm not quite sure who hasn't spoken because I was so distracted by the people. But doesn't matter. Well, I'm going to pass over to you, Chantal, because I feel there's a definite weaving with democracy and cities going on.
I was thinking the same thing. Looking at we're doing strategic planning right now and looking at participatory, like how do we involve the community in decision making, and then something is also recognizing what level of decisions can even be made at the different levels of government. And I think that's really important to keep in mind when we're empowering, because what can happen is sometimes we empower community to have voice, and then it's like, yeah, we can't do that. Or, we don't have the power to make that change. So it's understanding where those levers are and ensuring that the ask or the demand or the shift happens at the right points. And I'm going to pass it to Fariel.
Thank you, Chantal, because I would love to weave with you with regards to what you've just shared. I work with various different projects, like on the ground type projects in cities like Manchester, in Edinburgh, and places like Glasgow, and would love to have that kind of cross learning for that implementation locally. I see two other strands, particularly with regards to Olivier, Pavel, Annelise, and Alexander, and a few others that have been developing the whole learning space, the whole Learning Planet Institute and all of the university stuff I did not share that today, but my business partner and I have developed something called SRG Journeys, which I think are a perfect fit for that. It's just being able to see how do we apply that in that space. So it'd be really great to have a conversation, Olivia, about that, or whoever is heading up that particular aspect of this. Also, I think there is definitely a connection with all of the gaming stuff going on. So with, again, Annelise, and well, I already connect with Tim anyway, but I think Kodu fits in with all of that. It's like being able to kind of connect it together, and that's Kodu is almost that final step of being able to collaborate together. So all the rest of what we are doing is kind of journeying them towards that collaborating together. So I see this kind of journey of all of these pieces of software together with Teal and all the others. Then again, the festivals as well, if I may, prompt a conversation with Olivier about that as well, and see how we could kind of look at some of those and see, what would perhaps work best for implementation, and perhaps even connecting in with what you're already doing. That'd be really great. So I think that's where I'm going to end for today. Thank you so much. And I will pass my stick to...
Not a stick, it's a weaving, it's a ball of yarn you're weaving.
Yarn. I will pass my yarn to who else is still here? Who can I see?
Well, who do you feel connected to, Fariel? This is who, not what projects, what things do you feel that you're connecting with here?
Well, all of them have already gone, the ones that I was connected to. So this is why I'm looking for who is still there that hasn't gone.
I think it's going to be Kara, because we basically otherwise covered everyone who is in the active mode. So Kara, if you're around. or I don't know if you're still healing from the rising. And there you are.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just in the middle of cooking dinner, but just on the periphery, just feeling the energy bubbling up. So sorry, that's it for now. Thank you.
Well, I'll take this then because I'll be the last one here. And I wanted to say that I want to make a weaving connection between Chantal and Cara.
Yeah, okay, good.
So that's something which definitely also, I think there's something which we can, or which you can explore that I think is just ripe for on the ground action, really, for impact. So that's something really worth looking at as well. We're capturing all of this on the Miro board, which is awesome. We are completely over time already, 6 minutes. Don't want to abuse your time with this. So we're going to end this. And what I want to do with my ball of yarn is to close the circle. I would actually pass it back to Lev. And that takes that ball of yarn right back since he began. And I actually doing that, not just, there you go, thank you. And not just, because it's nice to close it, but truly, I feel there's the weaving connection that I would like to bring, because a lot of what Lev was talking about is this bigger initiative of really creating a different culture. It's a culture of Ubuntu, interbeing, intra-being, and it's one that is arising by creating the conditions that we are experiencing here of safety, of love, of care, and of empowered vision. So this is where we build with each other. And Lev, I know this is what you are doing. So it's beautiful, and I feel connected along these lines. And of course, that is truly, if you look at it now, we have a web that has been woven among all of us. If we were in the room, we would see this, because the web, the ball of yarn went right back to Lev now, and there is a pattern right here. We're going to try to kind of simulate that with our Miro, and we will continue and definitely share and foster further interconnections and relations. But Lev, the last word is with you.
Thank you so much. I want to really, from my heart, to express gratitude for investing our time. As Tim said, he's at a family reunion, and I have my 2 girls running around as well, and everybody else has his or her own sort of engagement. So we took 3 hours almost, most of us, of our lifetime to invest in creating connections, into creating this picture of how can we work together more effectively, create results which would change things to the better according to our values and our vision and common goals. So I will stop here. As Alexander said, this is the beginning. We have a long way to go. It goes beyond our lives. We'll be all sort of dead and reborn. But creating a happier civilization and more alive cities and the planet will continue. So we're just contributing to the evolutionary wave, as I call it. And we'll be meeting, many of us will be meeting in person in just a week in Switzerland. And we also have some plans to travel around the small European continent. It's easier than, fly between South and North America, for example, or Australia. So Europe, you can just take a car or a train, which is more ecological, they say. So thank you very much. Lots of richness today, lots of insights. We have a full map in our Miro board. I will publish it in all of our sort of chats. And let's work together for years to come. All the best.
Be well and thrive. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Lev, you're going to save the recordings here. Yes, and Lev, so Living Cities. So Sergey, make sure, yes, everything gets saved, and also the chats. All right. Thank you so much for doing your work. This is great. Love to you guys.
Bye.